Chapter 257. Everyone present was looking at Yi Xian. Usually, Yi Xian was amiable, especially in Blue Waves Academy. Not to mention outsiders, even the students of Blue Waves Academy rarely saw him angry. Explosive temper. Yi Xian's temper was also explosive, but he never had a bad temper with his own people. At this moment, these people in the surroundings were no longer his own people. A kind horse would be ridden, and a kind man would be bullied. A person couldn't be devoid of conscience, couldn't be without humanity, couldn't have no bottom line, but more importantly, couldn't be without courage. If a person didn't even have courage, then what was the point of living? Human nature was good, but it was also accompanied by evil. Good, treat good people, treat your own people. Evil, naturally treat evil people. Because to treat evil people, you have to be more evil than them, more cruel than them, then they wouldn't dare to bully you. Repaying evil with good, this kind of thing, Yi Xian would never do, and he also didn't want his students to do it. In the surroundings, along with Yi Xian's voice, the surrounding people retreated, because there were dozens of bloody heads under Yi Xian's feet. At this moment, they discovered that in fact, the person in front of them wasn't someone to be trifled with. The surroundings were incomparably quiet, no one dared to talk, not a single one. Yi Xian and the students of Blue Waves Academy slightly bowed to Yi Xian, then walked away, and in front of them, the crowd hastily separated to two sides. No one dared to stop them. Leave. All the students of Blue Waves Academy had tears in their eyes, especially Yi Xian, who cried until her face was like a cat. They had already regarded Blue Waves Academy as their home. Yi Xian remained silent. From the time he took over Blue Waves Academy until now, he had put in a lot of effort for Blue Waves Academy. He really had feelings for Blue Waves Academy. This time, disbanding Blue Waves Academy, in fact, was to protect Blue Waves Academy, or in other words, to give everyone in Blue Waves Academy a chance to develop themselves. Previously, Blue Waves Academy was too dependent on him. If this continued, he wouldn't be helping Blue Waves Academy, but harming it. In the academy, everyone had to experience all kinds of tribulations to be able to grow better. He believed that when they met again, everyone would be different. After a while, Yi Xian turned around and walked up the mountain. As if he had thought of something, he suddenly stopped. Scram! Everyone was stunned. Yi Xian raised his hand and waved. A wave of sword light slashed out, and more than 10 people on the right were killed on the spot. Everyone was horrified and hurriedly turned around to flee. Yi Xian chuckled. See, many times, when you speak nicely, they don't listen. But when you make a move, everyone becomes obedient. Looks like I, Yi Xian, am born to be a villain. You are an evil person. A voice rang out from behind Yi Xian. Soon, an old man appeared behind Yi Xian. It was Situ Ming from the Situ clan. Yi Xian sat on a rock by the side. The Realm Defense Alliance has personally made a move. They must be impatient to get their hands on the Origin Heart. You guys should prepare yourselves. Situ Ming walked in front of Yi Xian. Didn't you say that you can stop them? Yi Xian spread out his hands. You also said that if a true defensive realm expert attacks me, you guys will attack. But just now, when Supreme Lord Lu attacked, none of you did anything. Situ Ming was silent. Supreme Lord Lu. This was the top expert of the Azure Firmament world. And he had the Realm Defense Alliance behind him. They didn't want to fight to the death, or rather, they didn't dare to. Yi Xian smiled. Although we can't stop the Realm Defense Alliance, they are still our common enemy, right? Situ Ming glanced at Yi Xian. The Realm Defense Alliance won't let you go, and some people won't let you go either. Yi Xian smiled. Apart from the Realm Defense Alliance, the one who wants me dead the most is your Situ clan. Why? Is your Situ clan also attacking me? Situ Ming said coldly. Don't worry, my Situ clan is not in the mood to tangle with you. You will know who I am talking about soon. Finally, be careful of the Realm Defense Alliance. They will never allow a second Firmament Swordmaster to appear in the Azure Firmament world. After saying that, he turned around and disappeared on the spot. Not long after Situ Ming left, another old man appeared in front of Yi Xian. 5th Floor Master. The 5th Floor Master smiled bitterly. The old man just returned, but you have already disbanded the Azure Waves Academy. Yi Xian said with a smile. Only temporarily. The 5th Floor Master nodded. The things you asked me to auction before, I got a total of 7 billion high-grade spiritual stones. After saying that, He flicked his finger and a storage ring fell in front of Yi Xian. 3. 7 billion high-grade spiritual stones. Yi Xian kept the storage ring. This amount of wealth was enough for him to do a lot of things. The fifth floor master hesitated. What do you plan to do next? Yi Xian said with a smile. I have something to do. The fifth floor master said solemnly. Be careful of the Realm Defense Alliance. Now they have tore off their disguise. Now they can do anything. Realm Defense Alliance. Yi Xian nodded. Don't worry, I will be more careful. The fifth floor master patted Yi Xian's shoulder lightly. If you need anything, contact me at any time. Take care. After saying that, he turned around and left. After the fifth floor master left, Yi Xian met another group of people, the only group on the mountain. Lu Banzwang, Ling Han, and the others. Lu Banzwang and the others walked in front of Yi Xian, and Yi Xian smiled. We have just reunited, and now we have to separate. Ling Han said gravely. Brother Yi, are you really fighting with the Realm Defense Alliance? Yi Xian shrugged. You can say so. Hearing this, Ling Han sighed softly. This Realm Defense Alliance is not simple. Yi Xian smiled and said, It can't be helped. If I kneel and admit my mistake, and am willing to be a slave, perhaps it will be fine. Unfortunately, I am a person who would rather die standing than live kneeling. Ling Han shook his head. This Realm Defense Alliance has never had a good reputation. However, no one dares to voice their anger, because they are really powerful. Aside from the Azure Sword sect that suppressed them in the past, now that 1,000 years have passed, there is almost no force in the entire Azure world that can oppose them, and the Azure world can be said to be under their control. At this point, he looked at Yi Xian and said, Brother Yi, you are in great trouble. Yi Xian smiled and said, Don't worry, they don't dare to openly attack me. As for you guys, return to the Divine Central Continent first, because I will go there soon. At that time, we brothers will meet again. As for now, you won't be of much help even if you stay. Going back and cultivating is the most important thing. We brothers have plenty of time in the future. As he spoke, he pointed a finger, and a storage ring appeared in front of Ling Han and the others. In each storage ring, there were 100 million supreme-grade spirit stones. Ling Han and the others exchanged a look, and finally, Ling Han shook his head and said, Brother Yi, we don't want these supreme-grade spirit stones. You keep them, I take them. Yi Xian smiled and said, I have more. As for you guys, hurry up and reach the Myriad Laws tier, Law Defending tier. Otherwise, I won't call you when I fight in the future. Ling Han still wanted to say something, but Lu Banzwang put away the supreme-grade spirit stones, and then walked in front of Yi Xian, and said, Live well, I don't want to collect your corpse. After saying this, she turned and left. Yi Xian. Soon, Ling Han and the others left. This time, he was the only one left in the entire Azure Waves Mountain. This time, he was truly alone in the world, without any worries. Because he didn't have to worry about anyone, the only one he had to worry about was himself. Easy. After letting go of his identity as the Dean and Big Brother, he suddenly found that his whole body was much more relaxed. A moment later, Yi Xian arrived at the Martyr's Palace, which was now empty, because the spirit tablets of Elder Ji and the others had been taken away. Yi Xian sat in front of the palace, then took out a wine gourd, and began to drink slowly. As he drank, scenes of the past appeared in his mind. Yiling, Anlanxiu, Zhangjiu, Jianji, Mo Yunqi, Bai Zhe, Lu Banzwang, Ling Han. Elder Ji. As he drank, Yi Xian began to feel a little drunk. Azure Province. As Yi Xian disbanded Azure Waves Academy, the entire Azure Province was in an uproar. Countless people could be said to be cheering. Especially in the Jiang Nation, there was even more cheering. In the eyes of countless people, since Yi Xian disbanded Azure Waves Academy, the trouble in Azure Province would naturally be over. At the same time that Yi Xian disbanded Azure Waves Academy, the Jiang Nation's imperial family also chose to retire, and the army was also disbanded. Ordinary armies were of no use in these chaotic times. Jiang Yuetian knew very well that without Yi Xian and Azure Waves Academy, if the Jiang Nation's imperial family did not choose to retire, only death awaited them. Thus, the entire Jiang Nation's imperial capital was now a city of freedom, because no one came out to maintain order. There used to be the Jiang Nation's imperial family and Azure Waves Academy, but now there was no more. Chaos. After the cheers, the Jiang nation's imperial capital directly fell into chaos. Killing, plundering. Human nature. Without order, the darkest side of a person's heart could be revealed without reservation. Especially in these chaotic times, some people were completely releasing themselves in a frenzy. Most importantly, the cultivators of the divine central continent that Yi Xian had chased away had returned. There were over 20,000 of them, and most of them were at the Nether Passage Realm and Divine Union Realm. The 20,000 cultivators arrived at the imperial capital of the Jiang country. Some of the cultivators in the Jiang country hastily left the city. When they saw the two cultivators, their faces sank. "They're back?" One of the native cultivators from Jiang country walked forward and cupped his fists. "Everyone, Yi Xian has already disbanded Blue Waves Academy. He has also been driven away by us. If you want to find him, you can go somewhere else." Meanwhile, a fist suddenly smashed against the man's head. Bang! The man's head exploded. All the cultivators of Azure Province were dumbstruck. It was a middle-aged man from the Divine Central Continent who attacked. The middle-aged man laughed coldly. "Look for Yi Xian? Why do you want to look for him? Are you courting death? It's exactly because he left that we've returned. Brothers, kill." As soon as he finished speaking, over 20,000 people charged into the city. Chapter 258. They were crushed. The native cultivators of Azure Province were no match for the cultivators from the Divine Central Continent. They were crushed as soon as the battle began. The native cultivators of Azure Province didn't fight to the death. Instead, they fled madly. The more they fled, the more likely they would die. In the past, these cultivators had been prey to Yi Xian and the blue-tide Dao soldiers. Now, they'd become the hunters. Shrill cries resounded incessantly in front of the city gates. Despair. Countless native cultivators of Azure Province despaired. They weren't a match for the cultivators of the Divine Central Continent at all. The disparity in strength was too great. Only now did they realize that the cultivators of the Divine Central Continent hadn't come to Azure Province for Yi Xian, but for them. They'd naively believed that Azure Province would be at peace once Yi Xian left. Unfortunately, Yi Xian's departure would only make the cultivators of the Divine Central Continent even more unbridled. In next to no time, the cultivators of the Divine Central Continent charged into the city. The capital of the Jiang state had fallen. A group of cultivators from the Divine Central Continent had gathered at the foot of Blue Tide Mountain. All of them were looking at the mountain, and no one ascended it. "Should we destroy Blue Tide Academy?" someone suggested. The middle-aged man in the lead looked at the mountain for a long time. In the end, he shook his head. "The strong deserve respect. Let's go." With that, the group turned around and left. With the disbandment of Blue Tide Academy, Yi Xian's disappearance, and the return of the Devil Sect and the Ghost Sect to Azure Province had fallen into chaos once more. Without order, the hearts of the people were in chaos. Coupled with the barbaric invasion of foreign powers, Azure Province was in utter chaos. The only relatively normal states were the Ning State and the Great Cloud Empire. However, both of them had pulled back their defensive lines. Especially the Ning State. Tuoba Yen had gathered the cultivators of Ning State in the capital, and everyone had banded together to defend. Coupled with the 12 metal colossi that Yi Xian had given her, unless an expert at the true Imperial Dharma realm attacked Ning State, it would be able to protect itself. Moreover, everyone knew that Yi Xian was backing Ning State. Therefore, anyone who wanted to attack Ning State couldn't avoid thinking about Yi Xian. After all, Yi Xian hadn't died yet. Apart from Ning country, Great Cloud Empire had also shrunk its entire defensive line because it was impossible for Lien Wanli to protect the entire Great Cloud territory. However, there wasn't anyone or any force that dared to fight Lien Wanli to the death. It should be known that not only was Lien Wanli powerful, she was also related to Yi Xian. Therefore, when Lien Wanli withdrew her defensive line, there wasn't anyone that dared to offend her, nor was there a need to cause trouble for her. Qingzhou was very big. There was no need to find these hard bones to chew. It was worth mentioning that all the places in Azure Province that were related to Yi Xian were relatively safe. For example, the state of Zhang's Azure City, where Yi Xian had been born, had not been invaded by a single cultivator from the Divine Central Continent. No one wanted to provoke Yi Xian. But in many places, many people were still cheering for Yi Xian to disband Blue Waves Academy. They believed that as long as Yi Xian disbanded Blue Waves Academy, the Realm Defense Alliance and the cultivators of the Divine Central Continent would withdraw from Qingzhou. Not only that, but some people in some places, even though they knew that the cultivators of the Divine Central Continent didn't leave Qingzhou after Yi Xian disbanded Blue Waves Academy, but instead intensified their plundering of Qingzhou, hated Yi Xian even more. In their opinion, if it weren't for Yi Xian's resistance, the cultivators of the Divine Central Continent wouldn't be so angry. It was precisely because of Yi Xian's resistance that the cultivators of the Divine Central Continent were enraged. All of this was because of Yi Xian. Even though Yi Xian disbanded Blue Waves Academy and disappeared without a trace, countless cultivators of Qingzhou still believed that Yi Xian was the sinner of Qingzhou. Meanwhile, Yi Xian had already quietly left the state of Jiang and headed south of Qingzhou. Along the way, if Yi Xian encountered any evil cultivators of the Divine Central Continent, he would casually strike them with his sword. However, he would no longer do something as great as protecting the Qingzhou. The mysterious woman had said something to him before she left. Do what you have the ability to do. And he didn't have the ability to save the world. Moreover, some people weren't worth the lives of Yi Xian and his brothers to protect. Yi Xian was no saint, and he couldn't do something as virtuous as complain. You curse me and want me dead, and I have to protect you? He didn't know if a saint could do it, but he couldn't. He'd worked hard for the sake of this land. He could resist the cultivators of the Divine Central Continent, but he couldn't resist the selfishness and greed of the native cultivators of Qingzhou. Right now, all he wanted to do was to do what he could and protect those around him who were worthy of protection. At this moment, his goal was the Nanlian mountain range to the south of Qingzhou. This was because the god on the second floor wanted him to go there. There was a Dao law. While the god on the second floor had been gone, besides fighting a few battles with the Realm Defense Alliance, he'd also searched for a Dao law for him. No, it should be said that the god on the second floor had searched for himself. If he wanted to come out earlier, he had to find a second Dao law. And he himself wanted to find a second Dao law as soon as possible. Only with a Dao law could he better control the prison pagoda. Moreover, with a second Dao law, he might be able to open the third level. Although the people imprisoned in the pagoda were extremely dangerous, if he handled them well, they might become useful assistants. Take the god on the second floor for example. Although he was usually very fierce, he had helped him a lot. Yi Xian quickened his pace. His top priority now was to improve his strength. It would be best if he could kill true defensive Dharma realm experts even without the help of the prison pagoda. Soon, Yi Xian rode the black flame horse into the vast mountains, galloping like a gust of wind. Inside the prison pagoda, thumping sounds came from the second floor from time to time. Yi Xian had no idea what the god on the second floor was doing. In any case, he didn't want to provoke the god on the second floor now. Ever since the god had returned, he realized that the god's temper was getting worse. Especially now that the mysterious woman wasn't around, he didn't dare to provoke the god on the second floor at all. After all, he still couldn't beat the god on the second floor. At times like this, he had to keep a low profile. Yi Xian was very fast. Just as he was about to pass through a dense forest, there was a sudden change. A powerful pressure suddenly shrouded him. Boom! The black flame horse beneath him crumbled immediately, and he was forced to retreat several hundred feet. Yi Xian stopped in his tracks. In his original position stood a black-robed man. The black-robed man's entire body was covered in a black robe, so his face couldn't be seen. A true Imperial Magic Realm expert. The black-robed man raised his right hand slightly. In an instant, the space around Yi Xian started to distort layer by layer, like a fried dough twist. It was extremely frightening. Yi Xian opened his palm, and a sword suddenly appeared. In the next moment, he held the sword with both hands and slashed forward. Bang! As an explosion rang out, Yi Xian retreated several hundred feet in a row. As soon as he came to a stop, the moment he stopped, dozens of trees behind him turned into dust. Yi Xian looked up at the black-robed man not far away. The black-robed man's body suddenly turned illusory, and Yi Xian's expression changed. A powerful sword intent suddenly enveloped his body. Kindness sword intent. The moment the kindness sword intent appeared, a palm suddenly appeared above his head, but it was blocked by the kindness sword intent. However, as the black-robed man pressed down lightly, the kindness sword intent instantly crumbled, and Yi Xian instantly retreated more than 400 feet. This time, blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. A true Imperial Magic Realm expert. Yi Xian wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, and his expression was solemn. This was his first time fighting with a true Imperial Magic Realm expert, and at this moment, he felt that there was a huge gap between him and a true Imperial Magic Realm expert. This was a difference in quality, and this difference could not be made up for with equipment. After a moment of silence, Yi Xian suddenly leaped, like a white crane flying into the air. In the air, the sword in his hand shook violently, and a powerful sword force swept out like a torrent. Before the sword arrived, the force arrived first. Below, the black-robed man stood quietly. Although the ground around him began to shake violently, he was very calm. When the force reached the top of his head, he raised his right hand and gently lifted it up. Boom! The space shook, and the sword force released by Yi Xian instantly disappeared without a trace. At this moment, Yi Xian's sword had already slashed down. On the body of the sword, there was a dark sword intent. Evil sword intent. At this moment, the black-robed man opened his right hand, and then he grabbed lightly in the air. In an instant, the space where Yi Xian's sword descended fluctuated, and the sword seemed to be stuck in space and was unable to move an inch forward. Yi Xian suddenly roared furiously, and he held the sword with both hands as he pressed it down. The evil sword intent instantly exploded. Bang! The space trembled, and the black-robed man retreated over 10 steps. Whereas Yi Xian had returned to his original position. The black-robed man did not attack again. He glanced at his palm, and there was a bloody mark on his palm. Just now, Yi Xian's sword had pierced through his skin. The black-robed man was silent for a moment, and then he looked up at Yi Xian. It's rare for you to have such attainments in the sword Dao at such a young age. Unfortunately, you want to go against the Realm Defense Alliance. You really overestimate yourself. The black-robed man's voice was hoarse, and it was obvious that he was doing it on purpose. As soon as he finished speaking, he was about to attack again when Yi Xian suddenly laughed. You're not from the Realm Defense Alliance at all. If I'm not wrong, you're Situ Ming, right? The black-robed man stopped, and after a moment of silence, he took off his black robe. It was Situ Ming. Situ Ming looked coldly at Yi Xian. How did you guess it was me? Yi Xian laughed. If the Realm Defense Alliance wanted to kill me, they would do it openly. Otherwise, they would have sent someone to kill me a long time ago. Besides the Realm Defense Alliance, only your Situ clan has a reason to kill me. Because you don't want me to reveal that you're going against the Realm Defense Alliance, right? Situ Ming stared at Yi Xian. You're much smarter than I thought. Yi Xian laughed. Situ Ming, do you know why the Realm Defense Alliance doesn't dare to kill me openly? At this point he still wanted to say something, but Situ Ming shook his head. I don't want to know. The old man only knows that I can't listen to your nonsense, Yi Xian. Otherwise, I won't be able to kill you. As soon as he finished speaking, he charged directly at Yi Xian. Yi Xian's expression froze. Genius 1 second to remember website. Mobile version. Chapter 259. Situ Ming did not know how Yi Xian managed to convince the Devil Sect and the Ghost Sect to retreat, but he knew that if he continued listening to Yi Xian, he would not be able to do anything. This was because the Devil Sect and the Ghost Sect could be persuaded to retreat by Yi Xian, and the Situ clan was not much stronger than the Devil Sect and the Ghost Sect. Yi Xian must die. No matter how powerful Yi Xian's background was, he must die. This was Situ Ming's stance. This was because Yi Xian had something going on with Enlancio of the An clan, and Enlancio was a woman that the Situ clan had to get their hands on. Apart from that, if Yi Xian colluded with the Realm Defense Alliance, it would undoubtedly be very disadvantageous to the Situ clan. Therefore, Situ Ming chose to make a move directly to avoid unnecessary trouble. Yi Xian did not expect that Situ Ming would not even give him time to deceive Yi Xian. How could he fight? He could not defeat him. However, Situ Ming had already arrived in front of him with a violent force. This force was like a storm in the ocean, as if it could destroy everything. Yi Xian did not dare to be distracted. He quickly calmed his qi and focused. In the next moment, he took a step forward and slashed down with his sword. A sword to decide life and death. The momentum of this sword was not much weaker than Situ Ming's. Boom! As soon as the two forces collided, the dense forest in the area was instantly destroyed. Yi Xian was directly thrown dozens of feet away, and he only stopped when he stabbed his sword into the ground with both hands. Situ Ming was also pushed back dozens of feet. At this moment, Situ Ming's expression was solemn as he stared at Yi Xian. I've underestimated you. No wonder the Realm Defense Alliance wants to kill you. If I were the Realm Defense Alliance, I would not let you live either. As he spoke, he looked to the right of Yi Xian. Let's attack together. As soon as Situ Ming's voice fell, an old man walked out from the right of Yi Xian. He was also a true defensive magic realm expert. 2 true defensive magic realm experts. Yi Xian's expression was rather ugly. He didn't expect that the Situ clan would actually send out 2 true Imperial Dharma realms to kill him. They thought too highly of him. Situ Ming seemed to know what Yi Xian was thinking, and he immediately sneered. That day, Xueqi Academy didn't kill you because they didn't send their supreme experts at the beginning. Otherwise you would have died 100 times over. The old man is not as stupid as Xueqi Gakuin. Since I want to get rid of you, I naturally won't give you any chance. As he spoke, he and the old man beside him were about to attack. Meanwhile, Yi Xian suddenly said, Wait. As he spoke, he said seriously, I think that our previous cooperation and friendship can still be salvaged. You? Situ Ming ridiculed. Cut the crap. Even if you destroy the heavens with your words, the old man will still kill you today. With that, he disappeared. On the other side, the old man suddenly disappeared as well. He turned into a black line and headed straight for Yi Xian. Clearly, he wanted to kill Yi Xian. How terrifying was it when 2 true Imperial Dharma realm experts attacked at the same time? Yi Xian took a step forward, and an illusory Xiaota suddenly appeared between his brows. The prison pagoda. The sky instantly darkened when the pagoda of purgatory appeared, and Situ Ming and the old man seemed as if they'd been frozen on the spot. A pitch-black prisoner character hovered above their heads. Their eyes were filled with disbelief. As soon as the prison tower appeared, Yi Xian's whole body started to tremble. He was trembling very much. His face was also twitching. It looked quite terrifying. Situ Ming's face was filled with terror as he stood opposite Yi Xian. No matter how he tried, he couldn't move at all. Situ Ming raised his head to look at Yi Xian and said with a trembling voice, What is this? The corners of Yi Xian's mouth curled up into a hideous smile. You guess. At this moment, he was trembling as he spoke. Situ Ming was about to speak when Yi Xian suddenly said angrily, Withdraw. With that, the prison pagoda violently trembled. In the next moment, Situ Ming and the old man disappeared. When they reappeared, they were inside the prison pagoda. Within the prison pagoda, Situ Ming and the old man looked around in terror. Everything that was happening before them was beyond their understanding. At that moment, the prisoner character above their heads started to slowly turn red. Situ Ming was greatly shocked when he sensed this, and he hurriedly said, Yi Xian, there's room for discussion. The old man swears that if we get out, we won't take revenge. The Situ family is willing to submit to you. I said I wanted to chat with you, but you didn't listen. I don't want to chat anymore. This was Yi Xian's reply. These words were the last words Situ Ming would ever hear in his life. Soon, Situ Ming and the old man turned into nothingness, leaving behind only 2 spatial rings. Outside, Yi Xian's head felt heavy, and he collapsed to the ground. At that moment, he felt the world spin around him, and he wanted to sleep. He couldn't sleep. Yi Xian bit the tip of his tongue, and the intense pain made him much more clear-headed. At that moment, a small earth character suddenly appeared on his forehead. Dao Law. Lying on the ground, Yi Xian felt an endless stream of earth power converging towards him. The earth power eventually surged into his body and started to repair his body. At that moment, Yi Xian felt much more relaxed. After becoming more clear-headed, Yi Xian hurriedly checked the prison pagoda. As he had expected, the prison pagoda had closed again. However, this time, he had supreme-grade spirit stones. Now, he had 2 heaven-grade swords, a heaven-grade armor, 5 billion supreme-grade spirit stones, and a supreme-grade spirit vein. He had brought this supreme-grade spirit vein out from Blue Waves Academy. Now that Blue Waves Academy was temporarily disbanded, he naturally had to take this supreme-grade spirit vein with him. Yi Xian began to let the prison pagoda devour the supreme-grade spirit stones. Soon, the prison pagoda had devoured 1 billion supreme-grade spirit stones. However, the prison pagoda did not open. What was going on? Yi Xian's mind was filled with doubts. After a moment of silence, he continued to let the prison pagoda devour. 100 million, 200 million, 500 million, 11. Finally, after the prison pagoda devoured another 1 billion, the prison pagoda opened again. 2 billion supreme-grade spirit stones. Yi Xian lay on the ground, his face filled with despair. 2 billion. That was twice as much as before. Yi Xian's heart was bleeding. At that moment, he wanted nothing more than to turn Situ Ming and the old man's bones into ashes. The 4.5 billion supreme-grade spirit stones were devoured before they could even warm up in his hands. Most importantly, there was an extra generation this time. If he used the prison pagoda again next time, he did not dare to think any further. Because if he used it again and needed twice as much to open it again, Yi Xian wanted to cry but no tears came out. This prison pagoda was too damn expensive. Just like that, Yi Xian lay on the ground for a whole hour before he slowly recovered. After he recovered, he hurriedly took out Situ Ming and the old man's storage rings. In the first storage ring, there was a heaven-grade treasure. It was a spear. The spear was 5 feet long and its entire body was crimson red as if it was made from lava. It exuded a scorching aura. However, the tip of the spear was as cold as frost, bone-chilling. What a good spear! When he saw the spear, Yi Xian was shocked. The grade of this spear might be higher than his 2 heaven-grade swords. Heaven-grade treasures were also divided into good and bad ones. Simply put, they were supreme-grade, high-grade, and low-grade. This spear was at least a high-grade heaven-grade treasure. It was priceless. Yi Xian's previous unhappiness was instantly swept away. But this was normal. Situ Ming was the patriarch of a large force after all. How could he not have any supreme-grade treasures? Yi Xian took out the spear. There were 2 words engraved on the handle. Incinerate. Incinerate spear. Yi Xian held the spear in his hand and waved it lightly. In an instant, a fiery glow spread out from the spear. Wherever the fiery glow passed, the surrounding trees were directly burned to ashes. The spear had a fire attribute. What a good spear! Yi Xian grinned. If he sold this spear, it could fetch at least 3 billion supreme-grade spirit stones. One had to know that a heaven-grade treasure was at least 2 billion supreme-grade spirit stones. No, it should be said that it was impossible to buy a heaven-grade treasure with supreme-grade spirit stones. Only purple origin crystals could buy a heaven-grade treasure. What a bargain! Yi Xian grinned from ear to ear. He put away the incinerate spear and continued to check. Apart from this heaven-grade treasure, there was no other true rank treasure in Situ Ming's storage ring. Nor were there any cultivation skills or martial skills. Just as Yi Xian was feeling a little disappointed, he suddenly saw something. Yi Xian waved his hand. Soon, a thick book and a black badge appeared in his hand. Yi Xian flipped open the book. He was a little dumbfounded after taking a look. Clan history. It was the Situ clan's history. Not only was the history of the Situ clan recorded, but it also recorded everyone in the Situ clan. Apart from that, there were also some clan secrets. For example, how many people did the Situ clan have, how much wealth they had, how many forces they had secretly cultivated, how many spies they had in other clans, how many illegitimate children they had. Everything was recorded clearly in the book. Yi Xian closed the clan history book. His heart was tumbling like waves. 80 billion. The Situ clan's current wealth amounted to more than 80 billion top-grade spirit stones, as well as over 300,000 purple origin crystals. Purple Genesis crystals were much more precious than top-grade spirit stones because the spirit chi within them was no ordinary spirit chi. This spirit chi was called Purple Genesis chi, an extremely rare type of spirit chi in this world. One would need around 50,000 purple origin crystals to purchase a heaven-grade treasure. At this moment, Yi Xian also discovered that there were chi undulations on the clan history. It was clearly a small formation. He guessed that the formation was a destruction formation. In other words, if anything happened to Situ Ming, it should be able to instantly destroy the clan history, because it was just too important to the Situ clan. It absolutely could not be exposed. Unfortunately, Situ Ming had been imprisoned in the World Prison Pagoda and could not resist at all, let alone destroy the clan history. 80 billion top-grade spirit stones and several 100,000 purple origin crystals. Just the thought of it made Yi Xian excited. However, he soon calmed down. This wealth belonged to the Situ clan and had nothing to do with him. No. Yi Xian's mind raced. Who said it had nothing to do with him? Yi Xian looked at the pitch-black token in his hand. The Patriarch's token. The Patriarch's token. After a moment of silence, Yi Xian suddenly burst into laughter. Everything in this world was so beautiful. P.S. Weekly asking, do you still remember Xiaobai? Do you think she will appear in this book? If she does, how will she appear? Chapter 260. The Patriarch's Token. Yi Xian naturally knew what the Patriarch's token represented. It represented the patriarch of the clan. With the Patriarch's token and the clan's history, he could do a lot of things. Yi Xian put away the Situ clan's Patriarch's token and the clan's history, then continued to look at the next storage ring. There were no heaven-grade treasures in the second storage ring, but there were more than 1,000 purple origin crystals. Apart from that, there was also a palm-sized snow lotus. The snow lotus was sparkling and translucent, exuding a chilling aura. A heavenly treasure. There were some mystical objects in the world. These mystical objects absorbed the essence of the sun and moon and were nourished by heaven and earth. They contained great energy. The snow lotus in front of him was obviously such a mystical object. This mystical object could increase one's cultivation. If it was used by a special person, the effect would be doubled. Apart from the snow lotus, there were some miscellaneous items in the storage ring, but they were not worth much. At least for him now they were not worth much. In Yi Xian's eyes, ordinary items were not worth much at all. After putting away the storage ring, Yi Xian continued to move forward happily. Although he had spent nearly 2 billion supreme-grade spirit stones to activate the World Prison Pagoda this time, the harvest was not small. In short, he had made a profit. This time, Yi Xian did not travel in a blatant manner. After activating the cultivation technique Escape, he hid himself. It could be said that apart from true Imperial Law Realm experts, it was difficult for ordinary people to discover him. Moreover, even true Imperial Law Realm experts would not be able to discover him unless they were looking for him deliberately. After a while, Yi Xian completely disappeared into the distance. Not long after Yi Xian left, a shadow suddenly appeared in the field. The shadow stood there in silence for a moment, then said softly, "Miss, did you see that? Young master has reached the Sword Emperor realm at the age of 19. Even in our Dugu clan, he is outstanding. And Miss Yi Ling has stepped into the 10,000 Dharma realm before the age of 15. Moreover, her physique is special and extremely rare. If you knew this in the serene prison, you would be relieved." As his voice fell, his entire body gradually became illusory and disappeared completely in a short while. The Southern Link mountain range was located in the south of Qingzhou. It was remote and sparsely populated. There were only endless mountain ranges. Yi Xian's goal this time was this vast mountain range. Dao laws. He couldn't wait to find the second Dao law now. Because he discovered that if he used the laws of Dao to power the World Prison Pagoda, the World Prison Pagoda's backlash on his body would be much smaller. One had to know that he was almost done for when he didn't have the Dao law. And just now, even though he suffered a backlash, he didn't faint. Evidently, this law of Dao was extremely important. One day later, Yi Xian arrived at the Nanlian mountain range. After entering the mountain range, Yi Xian proceeded in the direction that the guru on the second floor had told him. In the vast mountain range, Yi Xian ran all the way. Occasionally, he would encounter a few demonic beasts, but these demonic beasts did not notice him. Under the guidance of the god on the second floor, Yi Xian came to the depths of the mountain range. After about an hour, he stopped. On the ground not far in front of him, there was a huge abyss that was hundreds of feet wide and bottomless. Looking down from his position, it was pitch black and there was even a black fog lingering. It was extremely eerie. His intuition told him that this was definitely not a good place. At this moment, a voice suddenly rang in his head. "Jump! Jump!" The corner of Yi Xian's mouth twitched. He took a step forward. The abyss was pitch black and he couldn't see anything. Yi Xian was a little hesitant. His intuition told him that nothing good would happen if he jumped down. Inside the World Prison Pagoda, the second floor started to ring again. Obviously, it was rushing him. This chapter is not over. Please continue to the next page. He did it. Yi Xian hesitated for a while before saying, Well, let me ask you something. Since you found the Tao Law, why didn't you bring it to me? This was something that Yi Xian had been wondering about. Since the guru on the second floor dared to find trouble with the Realm Defense Alliance, there was no doubt about his strength. And since he found the Tao Law but didn't bring it back, there was definitely a problem. A huge problem. Following Yi Xian's voice, the World Prison Pagoda suddenly quieted down. But very quickly, the second floor started to shake violently. Not only the second floor, but even the first floor was shaking violently. Yi Xian instantly felt a little dizzy. He didn't feel good at all. This guy was going crazy. Yi Xian hurriedly said, Don't mess around. I won't ask anymore, okay? The World Prison Pagoda instantly quieted down. Jump! That voice rang out again. Yi Xian took another step forward. His expression gradually calmed down. As if he had thought of something, he laughed at himself. Why am I so afraid of the slightest thing? As he spoke, he leaped up and directly jumped down. Ever since the mysterious woman left, he found that he had become a little afraid of the slightest thing. In reality, when something must be done, one should do it without hesitation and not be afraid of the slightest thing. The more he thought, the more questions he had. The more questions he had, the more fearful he felt. At the bottom of the abyss, Yi Xian was falling at a high speed. He was falling very fast. Beside his ears was the cold wind. This continued for an unknown amount of time. Finally, he felt his feet touch the ground. It was pitch black underground. Luckily, he wasn't using his eyes. Otherwise, he probably wouldn't be able to see anything. At this moment, he still hadn't reached the bottom of the abyss. Now he was standing on a stone platform that extended out from the mountain wall. Below the stone platform, he still couldn't see the bottom. On the surrounding mountain walls, there were green vines as thick as an arm and weeds everywhere. There was no sound or aura. Go down! At this moment, the god on the second floor spoke again. Yi Xian nodded. He grabbed the green vine beside him and followed it down. Just like this, after descending for a full hour, he finally felt his feet touch the ground. There was water under his feet. No, Yi Xian's expression suddenly changed. It wasn't water under his feet. It was blood. Blood. In an instant, Yi Xian was on full alert. He quickly asked, God on the second floor, is there any danger? After a moment of silence, the god on the second floor suddenly said, I'm not telling you. F***CK. Yi Xian almost went berserk. Are you kidding me? At this time, he still has to be arrogant? He really couldn't beat him. Otherwise, he would really want to beat this god on the second floor. What a strange temper. He had to be cured. Unfortunately, he couldn't beat him. Yi Xian took a deep breath and extinguished the thought of beating him up. He showed a smile that he thought was very, very gentle, and used the most gentle voice he had ever used in his life. God, may I ask, is there any danger here? After a while, a voice came from the second floor. Yes. Yi Xian's smile became brighter. What danger? I don't know. This time, the second floor answered very quickly. Yi Xian's smile froze. Don't know. Don't know what you're talking about. After a while, Yi Xian shook his head and continued forward. There was a lot of blood under his feet, and the smell of blood was also very strong, especially as he went forward. It was definitely not a good place. This was Yi Xian's intuition. After walking for an unknown amount of time, a blood-red flame suddenly appeared in front of him. The flame kept floating in front of him. Yi Xian felt his heart beating a little faster. Even though cultivators, if this chapter is not finished, please turn the page. Humans weren't afraid, but they were still a little fearful of the unknown. The flame was blood-red and only the size of a palm. It fluttered about, causing Yi Xian to panic. But soon, Yi Xian calmed down. He continued to move forward calmly. As he walked, he suddenly said, Sai, the clan is really too much. I came here to train, but they still sent more than 10 true Imperial Magic Realm experts to follow me secretly. Seriously, what's the point of training? As he spoke, he shook his head and sighed. To think that the Yi family controls the heavenly worlds and has hundreds of true Imperial Magic Realm experts. Who would dare to bully me when I'm training outside? Seriously, why would they send people to follow me? Not far away, The ghastly flame suddenly trembled and slowly floated backwards. Yi Xian's expression was calm as he continued forwards. At the same time, his body gave off a powerful sword aura. Sword Emperor aura. It was as if he was afraid that others wouldn't know he was the Sword Emperor. Yi Xian continued, "The elder ancestor is really too much. He said that I'm only 18 years old, but he insisted that I suppress my cultivation level and my sword cultivation. If he didn't suppress it, I would have broken through the Sword Emperor and become a sword immortal long ago." As he spoke, he deeply sighed. "Forget it, suppress it then. I'll pretend to be a pig to eat a tiger when I have nothing to do." Not far away, the blood-red flame gradually retreated until it completely disappeared into the darkness. Yi Xian quickened his pace and was slightly excited. This place is gloomy and not simple. I hope that a powerful enemy will come so that my trip won't be in vain. As he spoke, he sped up again. At this moment, the space in front of him suddenly trembled and an invisible door blocked in front of him. Space. A true Imperial Magic Realm expert. Yi Xian's heart trembled. The person who had secretly attacked was at least a true Imperial Magic Realm expert. Yi Xian glanced around and said in a cold voice, "Who are you? How dare you block my way?" At this moment, a cold voice suddenly rang out in the darkness. "Where did this brat come from? This is not a place you should be. Hurry up and scram before the old man has any killing intent." Scram? Yi Xian was stunned and then laughed crazily. "What are you laughing at?" In the darkness, the voice rang out. Yi Xian faced the distance and laughed. "In this Azure world, even the Realm Defense Alliance is just a servant of my Yi clan. You dare to ask me to scram? How arrogant of you! Do you know that with a single order from my Yi clan, not to mention this place, even the entire Azure world will be wiped out?" Yi clan? What Yi clan? I have never heard of it. The voice said again. Yi Xian snorted. "You have never heard of it, but have you heard of me, Yi Xian?" "No." In the darkness, the mysterious person replied. Yi Xian shook his head. "You have never heard of me. It seems that you are either not from this world or have stayed here for a long time. Let me tell you, I, Yi Xian, am the most outstanding swordsman in the history of Azure world. I am unprecedented and will never be surpassed." As he said this, he once again released his powerful Sword Emperor aura. The abyss suddenly became silent. After a while, the mysterious person suddenly said, "1,000 years ago, a person who called himself the Azure World Swordmaster came here. He seemed to be more monstrous than you." "Oh damn." Yi Xian's expression froze. What the hell? He had run into a god. What should he do? How should he act? Yi Xian's brain worked quickly. Very quickly, his lips curled up and he continued forward. "Senior actually knows about the Azure World Swordmaster. It seems that Senior is not an ordinary person." As he said this, he smiled. "I have created a sword technique. Please give me some pointers." As he said this, he opened his palm and a sword appeared in his hand. In the next moment, a powerful sword aura surged out from the sword. One sword to decide life and death. The mysterious person's voice suddenly rang out from afar. His voice was filled with shock and disbelief. End of this chapter. Chapter 261. One sword to decide life and death. Yi Xian held the sword in his hand and pointed it towards the ground. The sword in his hand contained a terrifying sword aura, like a volcano that was about to erupt. Sword aura. This sword technique, no, strictly speaking, it wasn't a sword technique, it was a belief in the way of the sword. The mysterious man was obviously someone who knew his stuff. When he saw this sword technique for the first time, he was shocked. This sword technique. Are you sure you created it? Yi Xian's expression was calm. Of course. The mysterious man went silent for a moment before saying, "This sword technique is extraordinary. If it was really created by you, then the swordmaster is far inferior to you." Yi Xian sheathed his sword and smiled. "Thank you, Senior, for your confirmation. However, compared to the swordmaster, I am still lacking. Of course, I won't look down on myself. To me, I have just stepped onto the path of Dao Yi and I still have a long way to go." The mysterious man said, "You can't be complacent and you can't feel inferior. With such a state of mind, you will naturally be able to walk further in the way of the sword." When he said that, he paused for a moment before continuing, "I don't know how you know about this place, but this isn't a good place and it isn't suitable for training. It is best if you go somewhere else and don't make a mistake. Yi Xian smiled bitterly in his heart. Actually, he didn't want to stay here because the mysterious man in front of him wasn't an ordinary person. If he continued to stay here, who knew what would happen? However, he couldn't leave. This time, he had to obtain the Tao Law. Yi Xian retracted his thoughts and smiled. Senior, you have been here for 1,000 years? More than that. The mysterious man replied. Yi Xian was shocked. He thought about it and asked, why did Senior stay here for so many years? When he said that, he continued, of course, if Senior is willing to stay here, then I didn't ask. If not, then maybe I can help you a little. This time, the mysterious man went silent. Yi Xian was delighted. Apparently, this mysterious man did not stay here of his own accord. Well, who would stay in such a dark place for so many years for no reason? At this moment, the mysterious man suddenly said, there's nothing you can do about me. If you leave now, you'll be able to keep your life. Yi Xian thought for a moment and said, tell me about it. Perhaps I'll be able to help. If I'm really unable to help, then I'll leave and won't disturb you any longer. After a moment of silence, the mysterious man said, go forward. Yi Xian nodded and continued to move forward. Although his expression was incomparably calm, his heart was secretly on guard. If it wasn't for the great god from the second floor and the world prison pagoda, no matter how good the Tao laws were, he wouldn't have taken the risk. Because he knew very well that the strength of this mysterious person before him was definitely much, much stronger than him. If their strength wasn't equal, then any schemes would be useless. After walking for about 15 minutes, Yi Xian stopped. Not far in front of him was a mountain wall. Under the mountain wall, a man was sitting. The man was wearing a tattered robe. His hair was so dark that it was touching the ground. Because his hair was too long, Yi Xian couldn't see the man's face. The man just sat there, and his hands and feet weren't tied. Obviously, something was restraining him. Yi Xian stopped around 30 meters away from the man. His expression was calm, but he was secretly on guard. At this moment, the mysterious man suddenly said, it's really rare to have such a cultivation in the sword Tao at such a young age. Unfortunately, your strength is far from enough to solve my predicament. Yi Xian said in a low voice, I see that Senior isn't restrained by anything, but you can't move. Is there another reason? The mysterious man suddenly raised his head, and a tiny empty character silently condensed between his brows. Empty. With the appearance of this empty character, Yi Xian suddenly discovered that the space around him was trembling, as if it was responding to something. Tao Law. Yi Xian's heart skipped a beat. This Tao Law was actually on this mysterious man. And this Tao Law was most likely related to space. Do you know what this is? The mysterious man suddenly asked. Yi Xian shook his head. I don't know. The mysterious man said, this is a divine item. Obtaining this item will allow one to obtain divine power. Unfortunately, when I obtained this item back then, I wasn't strong enough to subdue it, so I was imprisoned here for over 1,000 years. For the past 1,000 years, I haven't been able to move an inch. Yi Xian said in a low voice, this item is actually so powerful. Senior, do you have any way to save it? The mysterious man said, yes, find a special physique and let it choose someone else. Yi Xian said softly, I believe the blood on the ground is the person that Senior is looking for, right? The mysterious man said, yes. For the past 1,000 years, I used all sorts of methods to find cultivators and made them think that there was a precious treasure here, so they came here one by one. Unfortunately, no one came. This divine item was never willing to leave me and choose someone else. At this point, he paused for a moment before he continued, until you appeared. Yi Xian's expression instantly changed when he heard this. He wanted to retreat, but a mysterious force suddenly enveloped him. The mysterious man smiled and said, do you know how happy I was when you appeared in this abyss? Because this divine item actually reacted when you appeared. It was the first time in 1,000 years that it reacted to a human. Yi Xian's body trembled violently as if he had suffered a heavy blow. Meanwhile, the mysterious man was like a deflated balloon as he went limp. However, Yi Xian was frozen on the spot as if his body was frozen. After a while, the mysterious man suddenly burst into laughter. His laughter grew louder and louder until it filled the entire underground abyss. Just like that, the mysterious man only stopped after laughing for about half an hour. Then, he looked at Yi Xian in front of him. Back then, I chased after this thing for a full 10 years. Unfortunately, I didn't expect to be imprisoned by it. If it wasn't for this thing, I'm afraid I would have entered the Supreme Realm long ago. Yi Xian clenched his fists tightly. Senior, are you trying to kill me? If that's the case, that's fine too. It saves me a lot of pain. The mysterious man shook his head. How can I kill you? If I kill you and it comes looking for me again, won't I be imprisoned again? Moreover, I've stayed in this sunless place for over 1,000 years. Do you know how I've passed these 1,000 years? At this point, his expression was quite ferocious. 1,000 years, a whole 1,000 years. If I could commit suicide, I would have done so long ago. But now, I hope someone can come and feel the loneliness and pain I've experienced for the past 1,000 years. After saying that, he lightly patted Yi Xian's shoulder and smiled. With your cultivation, living for 100 years won't be a problem. After 100 years, I'll come and see you, haha. After saying that, he turned around and left. As if he had thought of something, the mysterious man suddenly stopped. I'm happy today. Do you have any last words? If you do, I don't mind saying a few words for you. After a moment of silence, Yi Xian said, help me pass a message to the Realm Defense Alliance's Supreme Lord Lu. Say, I'm your father. The mysterious man was stunned. Are you sure? Yi Xian said indifferently, I'm sure. However, the Realm Defense Alliance's Supreme Lord Lu is an expert above the true defense law realm. Although you're not weak, compared to him, I'm afraid you're much weaker. So, it's better not to go. The mysterious man shook his head and chuckled. Cheap provocation. Don't worry, I'll go. As for what you said about the opponent being not weak, that's because you don't know anything about my strength. Enjoy the rest of your life. After 100 years, this emperor will come and see you. After saying that, he soared into the sky. After a while, loud laughter came from outside the abyss. At the bottom of the abyss, Yi Xian shook his head. Too handsome. Can't help it. I'm always blessed by the heavens. After saying that, he walked to the side and began to laugh crazily until his stomach hurt. P.S. I have a friend. He likes a woman. Yesterday, the woman asked him to accompany her to the hospital to have an abortion. The child is not his. My friend actually went. Sigh, the most complicated thing in the world is love. One of my insights is that you can love, but you can't love in a humble way. Whether it's a man or a woman, if your love is too humble, the other party will only look down on you or not cherish you. I suggest that you stop dating and read more books. If you want to read books, you should vote for The Only Sword. Chapter 262. Tao Law. Although Yi Xian knew nothing about the origin of the prison pagoda, he still knew a little about it. There were a total of 9 Tao laws in the prison pagoda. The prison pagoda had obviously been severely damaged and the 9 Tao laws had been scattered. In other words, the 9 Tao laws had originally been in the prison pagoda. Without the prison pagoda, he might have ended up like the mysterious man and been imprisoned in the prison pagoda. However, with the prison pagoda, the Tao law entering his body was equivalent to returning to its original owner. Problem? There shouldn't be any problem. No. There was a problem. Yi Xian seemed to have thought of something and suddenly came to his senses. He hurriedly entered the prison pagoda. At that moment, the second level of the prison pagoda began to shake. The first Tao law was on the first level, which was also a seal on the first level. The second Tao law was naturally on the second level. In other words, after the Tao law entered the second level, the Almighty on the second floor would most likely be able to come out. Come out! Yi Xian gulped. He was still a little flustered. Although the Almighty on the second floor wasn't that bad, he wasn't that reliable either. If he left after coming out, it wouldn't be a big deal. However, if he didn't leave after coming out and wanted to seize the pagoda, it would be troublesome. The second floor was extremely quiet and there was no movement. The more it was like this, the more flustered Yi Xian became. At that moment, he tried to sense the space Tao law. Very soon he sensed it. After sensing it, he realized that he could actually sense the existence of the second level. He could enter the second level. No. This wasn't the second level. Yi Xian's expression suddenly changed. He was completely dumbfounded. This was the third level. The third level. At that moment, the second floor suddenly shook as if there was an earthquake. Obviously, the Almighty on the second floor also realized it. The entire second floor was shaking crazily. Obviously, the Almighty on the second floor was extremely furious. Yi Xian was afraid that the Almighty on the second floor would take things too hard, so he hurriedly said, Don't be angry. When the time comes, I'll find the Tao law of the second level and let you out, okay? It was useless. The Almighty on the second floor was still tormenting him with all his might. This torment made Yi Xian very uncomfortable. Even though it wasn't fatal to him, the world prison pagoda was connected to his mind. With the great god on the second floor causing such a ruckus, he definitely didn't feel good. Just like that, this went on for about half an hour before the god on the second floor stopped for a while. Yi Xian smiled bitterly. He could understand why the gods on the second floor were like that. After all, they had been locked up in the pagoda for so many years, and now they finally had a chance to get out. However, it discovered that the Tao laws were wrong, not on its level. If it was anyone else, they would definitely go mad. At this time, a shadow appeared in front of Yi Xian. It was the second floor god. At this moment, he was staring at Yi Xian with an unfriendly gaze. Yi Xian said seriously, Actually, we should live in peace. What do you think? The Almighty on the second floor didn't say anything. Yi Xian thought about it and said, How about this? I'll find the second Tao law within a year, and then I'll let you go. However, if I'm in trouble during this period, you have to help me to the best of your ability. How about that? The second floor god stared at Yi Xian for a long time. Finally he suddenly said, You're thick-skinned and you like to fool people. Yi Xian was speechless. The second floor god had been in the pagoda for so long that he had some understanding of Yi Xian's personality. When he was so shameless, even the world prison pagoda might not be able to break it. At this time, Yi Xian said in a low voice, Have you ever seen me fool my own people? I, Yi Xian, promise to find the second Tao law as soon as possible. When that time comes, I'll set you free. However, during this period, I hope you can help me at a critical moment. How about that? The second floor god stared at Yi Xian for a long time. Finally, he turned and disappeared. Obviously, he had agreed to it. Yi Xian also felt relieved. Naturally, he did not want anything unpleasant to happen between him and the god on the second floor. It would be best if everyone cooperated and helped each other. The third level. After Yi Xian convinced the second floor god, he immediately focused his attention on the Tao law. At this moment, he could already enter the third level through the second Tao law. Until now, there was no movement on the third level at all. Should he go in? Yi Xian was a little hesitant. If he went in and got killed, it would be such an unjust death. However, he was a little unwilling not to go in. After hesitating for a long time, Yi Xian finally chose to go in. If he didn't go in, it felt like something was tickling him, making his heart itch. Soon, Yi Xian entered the third level of the World Prison Pagoda through the Spatial Tao Law. The third level was very empty, without any items. Not far in front of Yi Xian, there was a wisp of white qi floating in the air. This wisp of qi was about the length of 2 fingers, and it floated quietly in the air. Apart from this wisp of qi, there was nothing in the entire third level. Qi. Yi Xian frowned. What kind of qi is this? He walked in front of the wisp of qi, but it was extremely calm and had no reaction. At this moment, the wisp of qi suddenly trembled, but in the next moment, the spatial Tao Law suddenly appeared above its head. In an instant, the wisp of white qi calmed down. Obviously, it was suppressed by the spatial Tao Law. Yi Xian thought about it and said, I'll let you out, but you have to be obedient, all right? The wisp of qi had no reaction. Yi Xian was a little helpless and was about to turn and leave. He naturally did not dare to release this wisp of qi without permission, because it was definitely not simple to be locked in here. Moreover, this wisp of qi was locked in the third level, which was a level higher than the second floor god. Right at this moment, the wisp of qi suddenly trembled once more. Yi Xian stopped moving. Under his control, the Tao laws suddenly left. Meanwhile, the wisp of qi floated directly in front of him and seemed to be sizing him up. A short moment later, it suddenly transformed into a ray of white light that shot into the space between Yi Xian's brows. In an instant, Yi Xian's mind went blank. It didn't take long for a scene to appear in the depths of his mind. It was an expanse of pitch-black chaos. There was nothing in the surroundings, and it was pitch black. Suddenly, this expanse of chaos exploded, and everything in the surroundings started to undergo a qualitative change. Just like that, this continued for an unknown period of time until the surroundings transformed into a starry sky, and there was a wisp of qi floating in this starry sky. A wisp of white qi. But right at this moment, a black pagoda that was almost 30 kilometers tall suddenly appeared in this starry sky. A moment later, the wisp of white qi was absorbed into the pagoda, and the pagoda transformed into a ray of black light that vanished into the depths of the boundless starry sky. The scene stopped abruptly. Within the pagoda, Yi Xian returned to his senses. At this moment, his heart was roiling like waves. The prison pagoda. The last pagoda that appeared in his mind was the prison pagoda. And this wisp of qi was called primal chaos qi. It was born during the primal chaos of the universe, and it was born together with the universe. As for it, it was rather tragic. The moment it was born, it was directly taken away by the prison pagoda. Not long after it entered the prison pagoda was heavily damaged, and then it was forcefully sealed. Thus, it did not have the chance to grow on its own. Right now, it was equivalent to a 3-year-old child. As for its use, Yi Xian did not know what it was used for. However, after this wisp of qi entered his body, he found that it was very comfortable. Moreover, this wisp of qi would constantly circulate in his body. As this wisp of qi circulated, he found that his entire body was extremely comfortable, as if the impurities in his body had been expelled. It was incomparably comfortable. Marrow cleansing? Yi Xian knew that the human body actually contained many impurities. After all, humans ate grains. In this world, there were some heavenly treasures that could cleanse one's marrow. In other words, they could absorb the impurities in the human body, allowing a person's physique to achieve a qualitative transformation. However, these heavenly treasures were extremely difficult to obtain, and only a few top forces could possibly have them. And now, this wisp of primal chaos qi in his body clearly had such an effect. Although this wisp of qi could not increase his combat power, it was more useful than increasing his combat power. Good stuff. Yi Xian grinned. As if he had thought of something, he sensed the wisp of qi. In the next moment, he was stunned on the spot. This was because at this moment, he could not sense his own existence. He found that not only was his aura gone, he could not even sense himself, as if he did not exist. However, the problem was that he was here. He had jumped out of space and was not within the 5 elements. He had only experienced this situation from one person before, and that was the mysterious woman. Yi Xian was completely stunned on the spot. Chapter 263. Aura Concealment? Escape from space? What was the use of that? Yi Xian was stunned for a long time before he suddenly slapped his thigh. Damn it, it's very useful. Aura Concealment. This aura concealment was completely different from his escape technique. In fact, it was on a completely different level. Now that he was using the chaotic qi, he could conceal himself perfectly. Even if he stood in front of a true defensive spell realm expert, the other party would not be able to sense him. Just like the mysterious woman. Apart from that, it had another use, and that was for escaping. With the chaotic qi, as long as he hid, who would be able to find him? Moreover, the chaotic qi definitely had other uses. It was just that he had yet to discover them. However, he was not in a hurry. After all, the chaotic qi would not run away. Yi Xian left the prison pagoda. At this moment, a tiny space word appeared between his brows. Space Dao Law. The moment this Dao Law appeared, Yi Xian was shocked to discover that the originally illusory space had actually solidified. At this moment, he could actually clearly sense everything in the space around him. How space was formed was made up of matter, and there were many types of matter. However, this was too complicated and he did not understand it well. However, he realized that through the Space Dao Law, his understanding of space had instantly increased to a level that only a true defensive spell realm expert should understand. The reason why true defensive spell realm experts were so powerful was because they could control space and use it to break down the energy that existed in space. Be it sword techniques or mystiques, they were all formed by energy. The terrifying thing about true defensive spell realm experts was that they could directly break down this energy. This was why there was such a huge difference between the true defensive spell realm and the true defensive spell realm. To put it simply, true defensive spell realm experts could not only use space, but they could also break down space. Now that he had this Tao Law, he could easily do this. Tao Law. At this moment, Yi Xian finally realized how terrifying this Tao Law was. Moreover, his intuition told him that the space Tao Law was far more than this. This required him to slowly study and develop. Yi Xian took a deep breath. Then he waved his right hand forward slightly. In an instant, the space in front of him started to ripple like water. After that, he twisted his right hand lightly, and a strange vortex instantly formed in the space before him. As if he had thought of something, the sword in his left hand suddenly flew out and stabbed towards himself. Just as the sword was half an inch away from his forehead, the spatial Tao Law between his brows suddenly trembled. In the next moment, the sword seemed to be blocked by an invisible barrier, and it could not advance any further. At the same time, the sword started to tremble violently, and the sword light on the sword started to disappear bit by bit. Decompose. Not long after, the sword light around the sword completely disappeared, and the sword began to tremble violently, as if it was about to disintegrate. Yi Xian stopped. He held his sword and said softly, "What a terrifying Tao Law! A true defensive magic realm expert would not be able to decompose a heaven-grade treasure, but the space Tao Law could. If he continued, he would definitely be able to decompose this heaven-grade sword. Of course, it would take a lot of time, and when he was fighting an enemy, no one would give him a chance to decompose it. Unless he could decompose a heaven-grade treasure in an instant, it would not be very practical. However, although he could not decompose a heaven-grade treasure in an instant, he could easily do it for anything below the heaven grade. Right now, he was at the Dharma realm, but he could use the space Tao Law to reach the true defensive magic realm. Of course, this was not the true defense realm. Although he could also decompose, the strength of a true defense realm expert was not only in using space to decompose, but also in battle awareness, experience, and the use of mystic arts and mystic skills. These were not to be ignored. Therefore, Yi Xian knew very well that he was not at the true defensive magic realm. Moreover, although he could use space to decompose, he still needed to rely on the Tao Law. Moreover, this Tao Law was not condensed by him. Strictly speaking, it was an external object, and not his own strength. Although he had a treasure, he could not rely on it too much or treat it as capital. Yi Xian did not continue his research. Instead, he left the abyss and went to a dense forest in the depths of the Nanlian Mountains. He was afraid that the mysterious person from before would return. Although he now had the space Tao Law, there was still a huge gap between him and the mysterious person. In the dense forest, Yi Xian continued his research. What he wanted to do was to develop this space Tao Law. It would be best if he could use it to create some special moves that belonged to him. Because he had thought of something, and now he wanted to try to see if it could work. While Yi Xian was studying the space Tao Law, a middle-aged man arrived at the World Protection Mountain of the Central Plains. The middle-aged man had just stepped into the World Protection Mountain when several powerful auras locked onto him. The middle-aged man was expressionless. With a wave of his hand, the auras instantly disappeared without a trace. "How dare you!" At this moment, an angry shout suddenly rang out from the top of the World Protection Mountain. Then, an old man appeared in front of the middle-aged man. A true defensive magic realm expert. The old man stared coldly at the middle-aged man. "Who are you? How dare you trespass on my World Protection Mountain? Aren't you afraid of having your entire clan executed? Who are you?" The middle-aged man was taken aback. Gradually, his eyes became somewhat dazed. After a long while, his eyes gradually began to clear up. "Lian Yuan. I'm Lian Yuan, Great Emperor Lian Yuan. Great Emperor Lian Yuan?" The old man frowned. "What's that? This old man has never heard of it." The middle-aged man called Lian Yuan suddenly waved his right hand. Bang! Without any warning, the old man was instantly sent flying hundreds of meters away. Hundreds of meters away, the old man looked at Lian Yuan in shock. "You?" Lian Yuan was expressionless. "Is Supremacy Lu of the Realm Protection Alliance here?" At this moment, a middle-aged man suddenly appeared in front of Lian Yuan. This person was Supremacy Lu of the Realm Protection Alliance. Supremacy Lu stared at Lien Yuan. Who are you? Lien Yuan shook his head. I won't say much about who I am. I've come to bring a message to someone. Who? Supremacy Lu asked. Lien Yuan said, Yi Xian. Yi Xian. Hearing this, Supremacy Lu's eyes suddenly narrowed. A cold light flickered in his eyes. What message? Lien Yuan said indifferently. He said he's your father. Impudent. Supremacy Lu was furious. A monstrous pressure directly crushed towards Lien Yuan. In an instant, the entire sky trembled violently. Facing this terrifying pressure, Lien Yuan's expression did not change. He gently waved his right hand. A silver light vibrated out. In an instant, the pressure disappeared without a trace. At this moment, Supremacy Lu's expression became solemn. The person in front of him was not an ordinary person. Supremacy Lu stared at Lien Yuan. Who are you? Lien Yuan shook his head. I've brought the message. The matter is done. Farewell. With that, he was about to leave. At this moment, Supremacy Lu suddenly appeared in front of Lien Yuan. Lien Yuan said indifferently. Although your strength is not bad, it's impossible for you to stop me. Supremacy Lu said in a low voice. You and that Yi Xian. Lien Yuan shook his head. There's nothing between us. I just came to bring a message. He said he's your father. That's all. With that, he did not wait for Supremacy Lu's reply and directly disappeared into the horizon. Supremacy Lu's face was livid. He had never been humiliated like this before. Gradually, Supremacy Lu's expression calmed down. He turned his head and looked into the distance. Do you know where Yi Xian is? In the distance, a man in black suddenly appeared. The man in black bowed slightly. I don't know where he went after leaving the country of Jiang. Supremacy Lu said calmly. Find out where he is. But don't act rashly. Also, does he have a sister? The man in black nodded. Her name is Yi Ling. She is now the Holy Virgin of the Northern Chill sect. She is extremely talented. At such a young age, she has already reached the Dharma realm. Chapter 264. Spatial Cage. What was a spatial cage? Naturally, it was the use of space to form a separate cage to imprison the opponent. The reason he had this idea was because of the mysterious man at the bottom of the abyss. That mysterious man was so powerful, but he had been imprisoned by the Tao Law for more than 1,000 years. Obviously, the spatial power of the Tao Law of space was extremely terrifying. Although he couldn't unleash the full power of the Tao Law of space, he could still make good use of this special spatial power. Spatial cage. It was a martial technique, no, a divine ability, formed with the Tao Law of space as a medium. According to his estimation, this divine ability might not be very effective against true defense realm experts, but it definitely wouldn't be completely useless. The strength of true defense realm experts was that they could use the power of space to disintegrate. What if he used this spatial cage to protect his sword chi when he used his sword skills in the future? In this way, he would once again narrow the gap between him and a true defense realm expert. Recollecting his thoughts, Yi Xian continued cultivating. What he needed to do now was to cultivate this spatial cage to the extreme. Apart from that, he had one more thing to do. Condense the Tao Law into a sword. He hadn't forgotten about this. Since the mysterious woman had asked him to do this, she must have had her reasons. However, he had to do one thing at a time. Now that he wasn't the dean of Blue Waves Academy, he didn't have much to do. Without any burden or pressure, he could focus on his cultivation. Temporarily disbanding Blue Waves Academy was actually a good thing for him. While Yi Xian was concentrating on his cultivation, Azure Province was undergoing tremendous changes. At least 80% of Azure Province had fallen. This was especially true for the Devil Sect and the Ghost Sect. After the two sects took over the Azure Province, they occupied a large area, and the cultivators of the two sects could be said to be unbridled. In addition to the Ghost Sect and Devil Sect, the native cultivators of Azure Province were also in chaos. Some of them didn't dare bully the cultivators from the Divine Central Continent, but they dared to bully the native cultivators of Azure Province because they were weaker than them. The entire Azure Province was in utter chaos. The only countries that weren't in chaos were the Ning Kingdom and the Great Cloud Empire, because even the devil sect and ghost sect strictly forbade their disciples from invading these two countries. The reason, of course, was because of Yi Xian, this person who had already disappeared from the Qingzhou. Although Yi Xian hadn't appeared in Azure Province, his legend still circulated throughout the province, especially those cultivators from the divine central continent. They were extremely afraid of Yi Xian. Or rather, they were afraid of him. It should be noted that Yi Xian had slaughtered countless cultivators of the divine central continent. Wherever Yi Xian was, it was absolutely a forbidden place. Although Yi Xian was not here, the cultivators of the divine central continent still did not have the nerve to offend the forces related to him. Not to mention the Ning Kingdom and the Great Cloud Empire, not a single cultivator of the central divine region dared to step into the green city of the Jiang Kingdom. At least, before Yi Xian died, these cultivators from the divine central continent would not provoke anyone related to Yi Xian. Countless native cultivators of Azure Province were regretting their decision. It was only now that many of them realized that the cultivators from the divine central continent hadn't come to Azure Province for Yi Xian. Unfortunately, it was too late. Without Yi Xian, Azure Province was even more chaotic. Therefore, some people began to look for Yi Xian everywhere, hoping that Yi Xian would continue to hold the fort for them. After Azure Waves Academy was disbanded, it completely disappeared, breaking up into smaller groups and developing on its own. These people were hiding in the crowd. They were quietly cultivating and waiting. They were waiting for the day Yi Xian would summon them. The Great Cloud Empire. Lian Wanli stood quietly on the city walls of the imperial capital. She looked ahead with her hands clasped behind her back, lost in thought. Her arm had obviously recovered. Behind Lian Wanli was the female guard, Azhua. After an unknown period of time, Lian Wanli asked softly, "Azure Province has completely fallen, right?" Azhua nodded slightly. "Sort of." "What about him?" Lian Wanli asked suddenly. Azhua clearly knew who Lian Wanli was referring to. She immediately said, "He vanished without a trace after leaving the Jiang nation. There's no news of him at all." Lian Wanli nodded slightly. "Keep an eye on him. Inform me directly if there's any news of him." Azhua hesitated for a moment before she said, "My king, although he's strong, he's too petty. Now that he's gone, Azure Province is. What can he do if he doesn't leave?" Lian Wanli suddenly asked. "If he doesn't leave, he won't just have to face the cultivators of the divine central continent, but also the native cultivators of Azure Province. He's done enough for this land. It should be everyone's responsibility to protect this land, not just one person." Azhua nodded slightly. "I understand. But my king, if I may be so bold as to ask, why are you looking for him?" Lian Wanli glanced at his arm and smirked. "Let him see this king's arm." Azhua was speechless. The divine central continent. The frigid North sect. On this day, an old man came to the frigid North sect. He hadn't come empty-handed. Instead, he brought many gifts. A marriage proposal. The old man sat quietly in the frigid North Hall. Not far from him sat a beautiful woman in a white dress. This beautiful woman was the sect master of the frigid North sect, Shen Weiyang. The old man stood up and cupped his fists. "Sect Master Shen, this old man has come on behalf of the Realm Defense Alliance. To tell you the truth, the Realm Defense Alliance wishes to become in-laws with the frigid North sect." "In-laws?" Shen Weiyang's brows furrowed slightly. "In-laws?" The old man smiled. "Exactly. I've long heard that the holy maiden of your sect is a genius who has reached the true 10,000 Dharma realm at such a young age. Such a genius naturally needs to be betrothed to a good husband. To tell you the truth, Supremacy Lu of the Realm Defense Alliance has a nephew called Lu Xianming. Xianming has admired the holy maiden Yiling for a long time. I hope Sect Master Shen can grant his wish." Lu Xianming. Shen Weiyang's expression turned ugly. Who didn't know that Lu Xianming of the Realm Defense Alliance was a playboy? Shen Weiyang didn't get angry. She raised her teacup and took a sip. Then she smiled. "Thank you, Lord Lu, for thinking so highly of me. However, Xiao Ling, isn't even 15 yet. She is still too young to be betrothed. Please understand." Hearing this, the smile on the old man's face disappeared without a trace. Shen Weiyang didn't say anything. Yiling was the future hope of the frigid North sect. Naturally, she wouldn't hand her over so easily. Even if she agreed, the elders of the sect wouldn't. Because Yi Ling was the next sect master of the Frigid North sect. The old man glanced at Shen Weiyang and said indifferently, "Why? Does the Frigid North sect look down on the Realm Defense Alliance?" Obviously, he wanted to use his power to suppress them. Shen Weiyang smiled. "What are you talking about? In the firmament world, who would dare to look down on the Realm Defense Alliance? As I said, Xiao Ling is only 14. It's really not suitable for her to be betrothed at this age. Let's wait until she's 18 before we talk about marriage. What do you think?" Delay. How could the old man not know that Shen Weiyang was trying to delay? He sneered. 14 years old. That's not young. Sect Master Shen, it's not a bad thing for the Frigid North sect to be betrothed to the Realm Defense Alliance. Especially now that the spiritual qi in the firmament world is thin. The spiritual qi everywhere is slowly disappearing. Then he smiled. According to what the old man knows, the spiritual qi in the Frigid North sect is slowly disappearing. Also, the ice in many places is slowly melting. Sect Master Shen, the Frigid North sect doesn't seem to be doing well. If something happens to the Frigid North sect at this time, it won't be good. Hearing this, Shen Weiyang's expression turned cold. A threat. The old man's words were a blatant threat. The old man ignored Shen Weiyang's cold expression. He stood up and smiled. Sect Master Shen, the Realm Defense Alliance has no ill intentions towards the Frigid North sect. We just want to be betrothed to the Frigid North sect. Lord Lu has promised that as long as the Frigid North sect is betrothed to the Realm Defense Alliance, the Frigid North sect's business will be the Realm Defense Alliance's business. Not only that, Lady Yi Ling can still inherit the Frigid North sect and the Realm Defense Alliance will not interfere with the Frigid North sect's internal affairs. Then he cupped his fists. In 3 days, the Realm Defense Alliance will come to fetch the bride. Please be prepared, Sect Master Shen. Then, he turned around and left. Inside the hall, a powerful aura suddenly swept out from Shen Weiyang's body. The ice table in front of her instantly turned into powder. Shen Weiyang's expression was cold and her eyes were filled with murderous intent. The Realm Defense Alliance has gone too far. Just then, an old woman walked out. She was the Granny Lang who had been following Yi Ling. Granny Lang said in a low voice, "I'm afraid the Realm Defense Alliance is doing this because of Yi Xian." Yi Xian. Shen Weiyang looked at Granny Lang. "Where is he now?" Granny Lang shook her head. "Ever since he left the country of Jiang, he has completely disappeared. We don't know where he is now." Shen Weiyang said after a moment of silence, "The Realm Defense Alliance doesn't dare to kill him openly because they're afraid of something. I heard that there's a sword immortal behind him. Tell this to the Azure province later. Make sure that he comes to the Divine Central Continent." Granny Lang said in a low voice, "Even if he comes, I'm afraid he won't be able to change the Realm Defense Alliance's decision." Shen Weiyang said coldly, "The Realm Defense Alliance's target isn't Xiao Linger, but Yi Xian. As long as he comes, he can successfully attract the Realm Defense Alliance's attention. The Realm Defense Alliance will only let Xiao Linger go if he dies." Granny Lang was a little hesitant. Xiao Linger has deep feelings for Yi Xian. If she finds out that we're scheming against Yi Xian, she'll probably hate us and the Frigid North sect to death. Shen Weiyang shook her head. "She'll understand us in the future. Just do it." Granny Lang sighed softly and turned to leave. Soon, the news that the Realm Defense Alliance wanted to marry Xiao Ling spread to the Azure Province. Azure Province, Nanlian Mountain Range. Yi Xian, who was cultivating, suddenly stopped and took out a voice transmission stone. A moment later, he flew into a rage and slashed down with his sword. Boom! The trees within dozens of feet of him were instantly turned to dust. Yi Xian sheathed his sword with a ferocious expression. "Marry my sister? Have you asked me? A bunch of scum." After saying that, he turned around and left with his sword. P.S. Men can't be too honest. If they're too honest, they'll be easily bullied. My friend's love is too humble. Sigh, if he was even 1/10 as handsome as I am, he wouldn't have had so many girlfriends. It's not an exaggeration to say that the number of people who come to my house for blind dates every holiday is enough to flatten my doorstep. Believe me, I'm willing to swear in the name of millions of readers. If I'm lying, Everyone's dicks will be shortened by 10 centimeters. Chapter 265. Anger. Yi Xian was naturally furious. He did not expect that the Realm Defense Alliance would not dare to kill him openly, but instead set their sights on his sister, Yi Ling. Whoever dared to set their sights on Yi Ling, Yi Xian, would be absolutely irreconcilable with that person. To the divine central continent. Yi Xian did not hesitate at all. However, before going, he had to do one or two things first. Ning Kingdom. After Yi Xian arrived in Ning Kingdom, in order not to attract attention, he quietly sneaked into Tuoba Yan's palace. As soon as he entered the palace, Yi Xian was stunned. Inside the palace, Tuoba Yan and Jianji were sitting in a huge wooden tub bathing. In an instant, many images appeared in Yi Xian's mind. At this moment, he was in a dilemma. Look or not look. Without being in a dilemma for long, Yi Xian shook his head and prepared to leave. Men could be dissolute, but they could not be obscene. Moreover, sneaking around like this was a form of disrespect to the two women. Even if he wanted to look, he had to do it openly. How could he sneak around? Yi Xian was not that kind of person. Yi Xian quietly retreated, but the next moment, he suddenly revealed his true form, pushed open the door and said loudly, "Long time no see." Hearing Yi Xian's voice, Jianji and Tuoba Yan, who were in the tub, were stunned. Yi Xian was also dumbfounded at this moment. The three of them were dumbfounded, but Tuoba Yan and Jianji just happened to get up, so their beautiful bodies were unreservedly presented in front of Yi Xian. Yi Xian was the first to recover, and he hurriedly turned around. "I didn't see anything." "Really?" Tuoba Yan's beautiful eyes were filled with anger. "Get out!" Yi Xian hurriedly walked out of the hall, and at this time, two female guards appeared in front of him. Obviously, they were alerted by Yi Xian. The two female guards were about to make a move, but when they saw that it was Yi Xian, they were stunned for a moment before hurriedly bowing. Obviously, he knew Yi Xian. Yi Xian smiled sheepishly. "It's a misunderstanding. You can leave now." The two female guards looked at each other. After a moment of hesitation, they quietly retreated. After the two of them left, Yi Xian sat on the ground. His heart was thumping wildly. It was a little exciting. 15 minutes later, in Tuoba Yan's chamber, Tuoba Yan and Jianji sat on the bed while Yi Xian sat on a chair by the side. The two women didn't say anything and just stared at Yi Xian. Yi Xian felt his scalp go numb. After a moment, Yi Xian was the first to break the deadlock. He smiled bitterly. "I actually didn't see anything. You know, I don't have eyes." Tuoba Yan glared at Yi Xian. "Don't talk nonsense. Tell me, what are you here for?" Yi Xian nodded and said seriously, "I want to go to the Divine Central Continent." "The Divine Central Continent?" Tuoba Yan frowned slightly. "What's wrong?" Yi Xian told them about the Realm Defense Alliance's attempt to force Yi Ling into marriage. Inside the hall, the two women were silent. After a moment, Tuoba Yan said solemnly, "This matter isn't that simple." Yi Xian nodded. "I know. I came this time because I'm a little worried about the two of you." Hearing Yi Xian's words, the two women glanced at him, and the anger in Tuoba Yan's eyes faded slightly. At this moment, Yi Xian took out a spatial ring and handed it to Tuoba Yan. "There are 300 million supreme-grade spirit stones in this spatial ring. 100 million of them are for the two of you to cultivate, and the remaining 200 million are for activating the 12 metal colossi. As long as the Devil Sect and Ghost Sect don't act against the Ning Kingdom, these 12 metal colossi are enough to deal with the cultivators of the Divine Central Continent. As for the Devil Sect and Ghost Sect, I'll personally go there." Tuoba Yan frowned again. "You're going to the Devil Sect?" Yi Xian smiled. "Don't worry, I'm confident." Tuoba Yan hesitated for a moment and then asked, "Will you come back after this?" Yi Xian shook his head. The two women were stunned. At this moment, Yi Xian asked with a smile, "Do you want me to come back?" "Yes," Jianji said suddenly. Tuoba Yan said coldly, "No." Jianji glanced at Tuoba Yan, and then he looked at Yi Xian. "She does." Yi Xian was speechless. Tuoba Yan rolled his eyes at Jianji. Yi Xian smiled. "Don't worry, I'll definitely come back to Pine Prefecture. As for the two of you, you must take good care of yourselves. If you encounter any difficulties, you can contact Jiang Jiao, Advisor Lu, and the others at any time, and they'll come to help immediately. Ji Anji nodded. All right. Yi Xian walked over to them and gave them a light hug. Take care. As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and left. Tuoba Yen suddenly said, Wait. Yi Xian stopped and turned around. Tuoba Yen hesitated for a moment, and then he walked over to Yi Xian and said softly, I'll wait for your return. His voice was very soft like the buzz of a mosquito. Yi Xian smiled. And then? Tuoba Yen glared at Yi Xian. And then die. Yi Xian laughed, and then he walked over to Tuoba Yan's ear and whispered something. Tuoba Yan immediately blushed, and then he threw a white jade bottle at Yi Xian, and said angrily, Get lost. Yi Xian put away the white jade bottle, chuckled, and turned to leave. Seeing Yi Xian disappear into the distance, Tuoba Yan's eyes suddenly became a little dazed. At this moment, she suddenly felt a little lost in her heart. Love. She did not think too much about it. She only knew that there seemed to be something more in her heart. After Yi Xian left the kingdom of Ning, he went directly to the Devil Sect. The Devil Sect's headquarters was built in an ancient city. The Devil Sect did not blindly kill. On the contrary, the Devil Sect had absorbed many cultivators from the divine central continent. The current Devil Sect was gradually strengthening itself. In a large hall, the Devil Sect master Ku Mingxiu was meditating. Suddenly, there was a cough in the hall. Ku Mingxiu opened his eyes abruptly. Not far away from him, a black-clothed man had appeared out of nowhere. The man's back was facing him, and his shadow was very long. Ku Mingxiu's expression instantly turned solemn when he saw this person. This was because he did not know how the person appeared, and he did not even notice when the person appeared. Most importantly, he could not sense any aura from the person in front of him. He could not sense any aura at all, as if the person did not exist. What kind of expert was this? Ku Mingxiu's forehead was already dripping with cold sweat. At this moment the man in black suddenly said, Sect Master Ku, don't be afraid. The old man does not mean you any harm. Otherwise, your head would have been removed. His voice was a little hoarse. Ku Mingxiu calmed down and said in a deep voice, Senior, who are you? The man in black said, The old man has left the firmament world for too long. This name means nothing to the firmament world now. He had left the firmament world for too long. Ku Mingxiu's heart skipped a beat. Senior, why are you looking for me? The man in black nodded. Of course. Sect Master Ku seems to have forgotten something. Something? Ku Mingxiu was stunned. Senior, please enlighten me. The man in black said, Sect Master Ku once promised my disappointing disciple 1 billion supreme spiritual stones, but Sect Master Ku only paid me 500 million. Ku Mingxiu was stunned. In the next moment, his expression changed drastically. Yi Xian. Are you Yi Xian's master? The man in black nodded. Ku Mingxiu gulped. May I ask if you are Senior Firmament World Sword Master? The man in black went silent for a while, then said softly, I never thought that after 1,000 years, there would still be someone who remembers the old man. Firmament World Sword Master. Ku Mingxiu's mind instantly went blank. He's still alive. Yi Xian did not lie to him. The Firmament World Sword Master was still alive and he had returned. The Firmament World Sword Master. He had once suppressed the Realm Protection Alliance with his own strength for 100 years, causing them to be unable to breathe. Moreover, he was once the publicly known #1 expert in the firmament world. At this moment, Ku Mingxiu's heart was in extreme shock. At this moment the man in black suddenly said, Sect Master Ku, one must be trustworthy. What do you think? Ku Mingxiu quickly took out a storage ring. With a flick of his finger, the storage ring flew towards the black-clothed man. Then he bowed deeply. It's my fault. Now, I hope Senior can give these 500 million supreme spiritual stones to young Master Yi. The man in black nodded slightly as he put away the storage ring. Chapter 266. Ku Mingxiu heaved a sigh of relief after the black-clothed man left. He was still in shock. The Firmament Sword Master. He didn't expect the Firmament Sword Master to still be alive. Not only was he alive, but he had also returned to the firmament world. Ku Mingxiu was glad that he didn't kill Yi Xian back then. Otherwise, not only would the Realm Protection Alliance be in trouble, but the Devil Sect would also be in trouble. Ku Mingxiu returned to his seat and said softly, "I'll have to be more cautious in the future." The black-clothed man left the Devil Sect silently without alerting anyone, just like how he came. In a mountain range, the black-clothed man stopped and took off his black clothes. The black-clothed man was none other than Yi Xian. Yi Xian heaved a sigh of relief. He had to admit that his trip to the Devil Sect was very risky. If Ku Mingxiu were to attack him, his cover would be blown. He was betting that Ku Mingxiu wouldn't dare to attack him. And he was right. After he used the Chaos Qi to conceal his aura, Ku Mingxiu couldn't see through him at all. Not only that, but Ku Mingxiu also couldn't sense his presence at all. Under such circumstances, Ku Mingxiu definitely wouldn't dare to attack him. Subconsciously, Ku Mingxiu had already regarded him as a terrifying old monster. Although he had successfully deceived Ku Mingxiu, he was still a little flustered. Under such circumstances, he would definitely be besieged if he made a mistake. Fortunately, he had successfully deceived Ku Mingxiu. In this way, he could leave Qingzhou with a peace of mind because Ku Mingxiu would protect the Ning country and the Great Cloud Empire for him. Without thinking further, Yi Xian turned around and left. His destination this time was the Divine Central Continent. 2 hours later, Yi Xian boarded a cloud ship heading to the Divine Central Continent. In a private room on the cloud ship, Yi Xian sat cross-legged on the bed, deep in thought. This time, the Realm Protection Alliance's target wasn't Yiling, but him, Yi Xian. If he didn't handle this properly when he arrived at the Central Divine Prefecture, not only would he not be able to help his younger sister, but he might even lose his life. It should be noted that the Divine Central Continent was the territory of the Realm Defense Alliance, and the Realm Defense Alliance was deeply rooted in the Divine Central Continent. Whether it was in terms of strength or influence, it was extremely powerful. If he went against the Realm Protection Alliance, the one who would suffer would definitely be him. One must be tough, but not recklessly tough. He had to think of a comprehensive plan. Time passed bit by bit. The cloud ship had already left Wanqiu Mountain and arrived at a vast sea. During this period of time, Yi Xian had been constantly studying the Central Divine Prefecture. In order to understand the Divine Central Continent, he had specially bought a history of the Divine Central Continent from Drunken Immortal Inn. The firmament world was divided into 3 great continents: the Central Divine Prefecture, the Kanglan Province, and the Azure Province. In truth, these 3 great continents were all connected. However, the distance between the 3 great provinces was rather far. Although there was a certain amount of communication between them, the gap between them was not small. The main reason was still the Divine Central Continent, because its martial arts civilization was the most developed of the 3 great provinces. In the eyes of the native cultivators of the Divine Central Continent, whether it was the Azure Province or the Kanglan Province, they were both barbarian backwater lands. But this was normal, because the strength of the Divine Central Continent far surpassed that of the Azure Province and the Kanglan Province. The Divine Central Continent was divided into the Upper Realm and the Lower Realm. But it didn't mean that the forces in the Upper Realm were necessarily stronger than those in the Lower Realm. Some forces were able to stay in the Upper Realm because their ancestors were powerful enough to establish their own realm. Simply put, they had to rely on their ancestors. And there were a few powerful forces in the Lower Realm. Even the Realm Defense Alliance didn't dare offend them lightly. 1 sect, 1 sword, 1 lineage. 1 sect, the Mystic Sect, was the most mysterious force in the Divine Central Continent, even more mysterious than the Realm Defense Alliance. No one knew the location of the Mystic Sect's headquarters. All they knew was that the number 1 genius on the Divine Central Continent's senior-level genius ranking was a self-proclaimed member of the Mystic Sect. 1 sword was the Grey Sword Sect. The Grey Sword Sect had been at its most glorious when the Sword Master of the Grey Realm was still around. At that time, the Grey Sword Sect had undoubtedly been the strongest force in the Green Firmament world, and even the Realm Defense Alliance had been suppressed. Although the Sword Master of the Grey Realm was no longer around, no force dared to underestimate them. 1 lineage referred to the 10,000 Beasts mountain range. In the Green Firmament world, there was a group of powerful monsters that lived in the 10,000 Beasts mountain range. The true strength of the 10,000 Beasts mountain range had always been a mystery. Even the Realm Defense Alliance was afraid of the 10,000 Beast mountain range. All in all, the Realm Defense Alliance wasn't absolutely the strongest force in the Divine Central Continent. In his room, Yi Xian put away the information. After a long period of contemplation, he began to cultivate. He was now at the Dharma realm, and what he needed to do was reach the Dharma realm before he entered the Divine Central Continent. In order to reach the Dharma realm, he had to learn how to use space. With the Space Tao Law, it wasn't difficult for him to accomplish that. In the following period of time, Yi Xian used the Space Tao Law to comprehend it. Although he could use the Space Tao Law to use space and even spatial decomposition, that was the ability of the Space Tao Law, not his own. What he needed to do was to be able to use space without borrowing the Space Tao Law. Finally, he would use space disintegration. It could be said that the Space Tao Law was his best master, at least until he reached the Dharma realm. 2 days later, the cloud ship arrived at an archipelago. At this moment, a voice came from the ship. "Everyone, the Thousand Clouds Island is up ahead. Mercenaries and pirates come and go there all year round, so please be careful." At this moment, Yi Xian walked out of the cloud ship. He would come out to bask in the sun at noon every day. At that moment, he did not reveal his true appearance. Instead, he was wearing a large gray robe that covered his entire body. It was no secret in the Azure Firmament world that the Realm Defense Alliance had placed a bounty on his head. Although he wasn't afraid of trouble, he didn't want to cause any trouble right now. It was better to keep a low profile. At this moment, a man and a woman arrived at Yi Xian's side. The man wore a white robe and held a white jade fan in his hand. He had a graceful bearing, while the woman wore a jade green dress. Her features were delicate and pretty, and she was quiet and elegant. The man sized up Yi Xian and said with a smile, "Brother, you should have escaped from Azure Province as well, right?" "Escaped?" Yi Xian turned to look at the man, slightly puzzled. The man shook his head slightly. Azure Province has almost completely fallen into enemy hands. Many powerful clans and individuals are thinking of ways to escape Azure Province and head for the Divine Central Continent. After all, only the Divine Central Continent can be considered peaceful in the Azure Firmament world. Yi Xian nodded slightly, somewhat understanding. Although the rich and powerful clans couldn't resist in times of chaos, they had the ability to escape. Take the 2 people before him for example. They were probably either rich or noble. At any given time, it was actually the people at the bottom who were truly miserable. Meanwhile, the man suddenly said, "Actually, the main reason our Azure Province has fallen into such a state is because of that Yi Xian." Yi Xian was speechless. The man tapped his fan against his palm, and his eyes were filled with rage. I don't know how that Yi Xian offended the Realm Defense Alliance to the point that they actually issued an arrest warrant for him. It's exactly because of this arrest warrant that the Devil Sect, Ghost Sect, and countless cultivators from the Divine Central Continent were drawn here. Cultivators. Even if Yi Xian dies 10,000 times, it still won't be enough to atone for his crimes. Yi Xian was about to speak when the woman suddenly said, "Big brother, you can't blame Yi Xian for this. In my opinion, it's the Realm Defense Alliance's fault. Firstly, it's exactly because of their connivance that those cultivators from the Divine Central Continent dared to come to Azure Province. If they hadn't given the nod, would those cultivators have dared to act rashly in Azure Province? Secondly, even if Yi Xian offended the Realm Defense Alliance, why didn't they just go look for Yi Xian? In my opinion, Yi Xian is just an excuse the Realm Defense Alliance is looking for. It's an excuse for those cultivators from the Divine Central Continent to come to Azure Province." Yi Xian couldn't help but look at the woman, and he was slightly surprised. Meanwhile, the man grunted, "What do you know? It's exactly because of Yi Xian that the Realm Defense Alliance vented its anger on the entire Azure Province. If it wasn't for him, then it would be impossible for so many things to happen in Azure Province. Yi Xian is a jinx, he." Suddenly, Yi Xian turned around and slapped the man. Slap. A resounding slap resounded, and then the man was blasted over 10 m away. Everyone on the deck of the cloud vessel was stunned. The woman by Yi Xian's side gazed at Yi Xian with astonishment. Why did you hit him?" Yi Xian said indifferently, "It's rare to encounter such a weirdo, so I wanted to hit him." The woman. Nearby, the man who had been blasted away by Yi Xian stood up, wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, and then glared angrily at Yi Xian. You actually dared to hit me. Do you know that the steward of this cloud vessel is my uncle? Yi Xian suddenly vanished, and in the next moment, slap! The man was blasted away again. Yi Xian clapped his hands. All the more reason to hit him. The man stood up again, and this time besides rage, there was also fear in his eyes. Because he hadn't even been able to fight back just now. He was at the peak of the divine combination realm. The man didn't try to put on a brave front again. It didn't take long for an old man and 6 guards to appear on the cloud vessel's deck. All 6 of them had a small Xueqi character on their left chests. Immortal Indulgence Inn. Although the drunken Immortal Inn had announced that they would withdraw from Qingzhou, they actually didn't. They were still running some businesses, such as this cloud vessel business. When the old man saw the man's appearance, his face instantly turned cold. Then he turned to look at Yi Xian. You did this? Yi Xian nodded. The old man stared at Yi Xian. Previously, he said that he was the old man's nephew, but you still wanted to attack him. It seems that you don't put my drunken Immortal Inn in your eyes. Yi Xian shook his head. I have no ill intentions towards the drunken Immortal Inn. The old man said coldly. Old man, I can see that you have a lot of ill intentions. Since you dare to attack me on the cloud vessel, I believe that you have some confidence. Tell me. Yi Xian shook his head. I'm just a rogue cultivator. The old man narrowed his eyes. I'll give you one last chance. If you don't tell me your background, this old man won't be polite. Yi Xian thought for a moment, then flicked his finger, and a dark golden token appeared in front of the old man. This token was given to him by the 5th floor master, and it was the highest grade of the Drunken Immortal Inn. The old man glanced at the token and frowned. What rubbish is this? Saying that, he casually threw the cloud vessel down, then said, Beat him to death, throw the cloud vessel away. Yi Xian. P.S. Let me explain why there are 2 updates today. I've been thinking for an entire night, and I finally thought of a reason that won't be scolded. Because today that something came. Chapter 267. Yi Xian was stunned. He doesn't know him? He actually doesn't know him? That's the highest gold card of the Immortal Indulgence Inn. And it's been thrown away just like that. As soon as the old man finished speaking, the guards of the Immortal Indulgence Inn were about to attack. Meanwhile, the woman spoke abruptly. Wait! She stood in front of Yi Xian as she spoke. At the same time, she waved her hand, and the black venerable card that the old man had thrown off the cloud ship flew back onto the cloud ship. Then it landed in her hand. Everyone gazed at the woman. The woman glanced at the black card, and her hand started to tremble as she looked at it. The old man frowned. Little girl, what are you doing? The woman gazed at Yi Xian, and her voice was trembling slightly. Is this a black card? Yi Xian spoke indifferently. Take a guess. The woman took a deep breath, and then she gazed at the old man. The old man hurriedly walked over and snatched the black card. As he looked at it, his hand started to tremble as well. A black card. Naturally, he didn't know about it because he'd only heard of it. It was the highest black card of the Immortal Indulgence Inn, and one didn't just have to be rich to possess such a card, one had to be of status as well. How could a lowly manager like him have come into contact with such a person? Or perhaps, he'd never imagined that there would be a passenger with a black card on the ship. Moreover, Yi Xian was in an ordinary room. The old man's body trembled as he gazed at Yi Xian. Say. Your Excellency. Old man. Old man is as blind as a bat. Yi Xian waved his hand, and then he pointed at the woman. From this moment onwards, she'll be the manager of the ship. The woman was stunned, and then she hurriedly shook her head. No. I can't. Yi Xian spoke indifferently. I think you can. The old man wanted to say something, but Yi Xian waved his hand. Leave. The old man naturally didn't dare to resist, and he immediately bowed deeply before he hurriedly pulled the man away with him. The woman hesitated for a moment before she said, Sir, the steward of the ship, Yi Xian said, your uncle and brother are short-sighted and overly arrogant. If they were ordinary people, it would be fine. But if they were in power, there would be a great disaster in the future. The woman thought for a long time before she finally nodded. I understand. Yi Xian nodded. You may leave. The woman hesitated for a moment before she said, I'm Emol Yen. You can call me Little Yen. Please feel free to let me know if you need anything. After saying that, she bowed slightly, turned around and left. On the deck of the cloud ship, Yi Xian placed his hands behind his back and calmed himself down. There was only 1 day left before the Realm Defense Alliance would forcefully marry Yi Ling. He had to arrive at the Central Divine Prefecture by tonight. And with his current speed, if nothing unexpected happened, there should be no problem. Yi Xian slowly clenched his fists. At this moment, he was naturally burning with anxiety. Yi Ling. He didn't know if the Frost North sect would protect Yi Ling to the death. If they didn't protect Yi Ling and handed Yi Ling over. In short, he had to get to the Central Divine Prefecture as soon as possible. He wouldn't place his hopes on anyone else when it came to his younger sister. Right when the cloud ship was about to fly past the 1,000 Cloud Islands, an enormous net was suddenly cast down from above, and it instantly enveloped the entire ship. At the same time, 4 other black cloud ships suddenly appeared around the ship. It's the mercenaries and pirates. A shocked voice suddenly resounded from the ship. After that, the old steward that Yi Xian had dismissed hurried over to the front of the ship, and his eyes were filled with astonishment. A man in luxurious robes suddenly appeared above Yi Xian and the others. He looked down and was about to speak when Yi Xian suddenly said, Fuck off. Clouds. On the ship, the old man, Xiao Lian, and the others all looked at Yi Xian, their eyes filled with astonishment. In the air, the man in luxurious robes looked at Yi Xian with a ferocious expression. You told me to fuck off? Yi Xian shook his head. I've changed my mind. As he spoke, he raised a hand and pointed. Swish. A ray of sword light instantly pierced the man's forehead. In the air, the man in luxurious robes slowly fell. Everyone was dumbfounded. Yi Xian drew a line with his fingers, and a ray of sword light rippled out. The net that enveloped the cloud ship instantly shattered. Then, he turned to Xiao Lian. Keep going, don't stop. Xiao Lian was stunned, and then she hurriedly turned around and shouted, Don't stop, keep going. The cloud ship continued forward. In the distance, 6 cloud ships suddenly blocked the path of the cloud ship that Yi Xian was on. A dozen experts suddenly flew out from the 6 cloud ships. They were all in the Dharma realm. At the sight of this, everyone on the cloud ship that Yi Xian was on instantly turned pale. This was because there were only 2 Dharma realm experts on this cloud ship. The old man hesitated for a moment, and then he hurriedly bowed deeply to the sky. Everyone, this old man is the manager of the Drunken Immortal Inn. Please consider my Drunken Immortal Inn. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly flew out. The next moment, a scream sounded in the distance, and a bloody head slowly fell from the sky. After a few breaths, Yi Xian had returned to the cloud ship, and in the distance, a dozen heads fell from the sky in an orderly manner. On the cloud ship, everyone was petrified. Yi Xian sheathed his sword. Forward, speed up. The cloud ship continued forward. A moment later, only Yi Xian was left on the cloud ship. Obviously, the people on the cloud ship were more afraid of Yi Xian than they were grateful. The killing intent that Yi Xian emitted just now was too terrifying. At this moment, Xiao Lian suddenly came behind Yi Xian. She glanced at Yi Xian and said softly, Your identity should have been exposed. Obviously, she had already guessed Yi Xian's identity. Not only her, many people might have guessed it just now. Swordsman. There was only one famous swordsman in Qingzhou, and that was Yi Xian. Moreover, who in Qingzhou didn't know that Yi Xian was on good terms with the Drunken Immortal Inn? It was completely possible that Yi Xian had the black card of the Drunken Immortal Inn. Exposed identity? Yi Xian said softly, It's fine. Xiao Lian nodded and did not say anything else. She turned around and retreated. On the deck of the cloud ship, only Yi Xian was left. Yi Xian took out a small wooden figure. The small wooden figure had 2 whips tied to it, and it looked exactly like Yi Ling. Yi Xian said softly, Don't worry with me around, no one will dare to bully you. The cloud ship moved forward at top speed. 6 hours later, the cloud ship suddenly stopped. They had arrived. When the cloud ship stopped, Xiao Lian came to the deck of the cloud ship. At this moment, the deck was already empty. Xiao Lian was stunned for a moment before she said softly, "Gone." Just at this moment, an elderly suddenly appeared in the sky above the cloud ship. The elderly's soul trace swept across the cloud ship, but he didn't discover anything. Finally, the elderly's gaze fell onto Xiao Lian. "Where's that swordsman?" Xiao Lian's voice trembled. "Gone, already gone." The elderly turned his head and swept a glance at the surroundings. "He shouldn't have gone far. Check the surroundings thoroughly." Saying that, he had already disappeared. Below, in a corner, Yi Xian said softly, "No wonder the Realm Protection Alliance is so well informed." Saying that, he turned around and left. The current him, as long as he didn't show himself, no one would be able to discover him. Sky Cloud City. Sky Cloud City was the central continent's largest city. This was the largest city in the prefecture, and the master behind the city was the Realm Defense Alliance. This city was so big that it could accommodate up to 100 million people. And the Realm Protection Alliance could rely on this city to earn at least 10 billion high-grade spirit stones every year. Sky Cloud City wasn't on the ground, but in the sky. It was about 800 feet above the ground and was built by the Realm Protection Alliance after spending a huge amount of money. Being in the city, it was like being in the clouds. Yi Xian spent 10 high-grade spirit stones to enter Sky Cloud City. This was the so-called entrance fee. Sky Cloud City could probably earn tens of millions of high-grade spirit stones from this entrance fee daily. At this moment, Yi Xian then realized that he was actually very poor. On this day, the city was decorated with lanterns and streamers, looking very festive. Because today was the day that Sky Cloud City's young city lord Lu Xianming was going to marry the Northern Chill Sect saintess, Yi Ling. On this day, there were many powerhouses who came to Sky Cloud City in advance to congratulate. Among them, even the 3 sects and 5 families had sent people over. Lu Xianming obviously didn't have such a big influence, but his uncle did. Who didn't know that his uncle was the Realm Protection Alliance's Supreme Lu? In the city lord's residence, in one of the main halls, the sound of a lady's laughter could be heard from time to time, and occasionally there were some moaning sounds. And it wasn't just one. At the entrance of the hall, the 2 guards felt unbearably hot listening to it. At this moment the guard on the left suddenly said, "Today is the young city lord's big day, but he still wants to mess around. If this gets out, I'm afraid that Northern Chill Sect will be angered to death." The guard on the right laughed. "Angered to death? Don't tell me that Northern Chill Sect doesn't know what kind of character young city lord has? They have no other choice. Who asked our young city lord to have Supreme Lu behind him?" Speaking of this, he shook his head and laughed. "When that saintess marries over, I'm afraid she'll have to suffer in the future." The guard on the left nodded slightly. "Don't say any more. The more you talk, the more you slip up. Be careful not to get into trouble." Very quickly, the outside of the hall quietened down. Not only the outside of the hall, even the inside of the hall quietened down. The 2 guards looked at each other and one of them transmitted his profound chi. "I'm afraid this young city lord is playing some tricks again, hee. In the hall. At this moment, a completely naked man was sweating profusely and his eyes were filled with terror. Because there was a sword at his throat. And in front of him stood a man in a grey robe. This man in a grey robe was Yi Xian. Around the 2 of them were 4 to 5 women lying on the ground. But at this moment, these 4 to 5 women had already fainted. The naked man was just about to speak when the sword suddenly moved forward. Swish! The naked man's throat split open and his voice was forcefully swallowed back. Yi Xian punched the man's head and he instantly fainted. Yi Xian kept the storage ring on the man's hand and he took out a white jade bottle. This was what he had gotten from Tuoba Yen. Yi Xian poured out a red elixir and fed it to the man. Then, he quietly took the man out of the hole. After dawn, a group of pig demons suddenly appeared at the gate of Sky Cloud City. And among this group of pig demons, there was a naked man with his head covered. And at this moment, this man was doing indescribably shameful things with these pig demons. Countless people were attracted by this scene and soon, more and more people gathered here. More and more people came and in the end, even the city walls were filled with people pointing and talking. And at this moment, the black cloth on the head of the man in the group of pig demons suddenly split open. At this moment, everyone saw the man's true face. When they saw the man's face, there was an uproar. It's young city lord Lu Xianming. F***ck. Lu Xianming dared to F***ck a pig. M. Chapter 268. Everyone had an interesting look on their faces. It was rare to see a good show like this. At that moment, a middle-aged man suddenly appeared at the city gate. It was the city lord of Sky Cloud City, Lu Feng. When he saw Lu Xianming still hugging a pig demon in the distance, Lu Feng's expression turned ugly. With a wave of his right hand, the group of pig demons instantly exploded. At that moment, Lu Xianming charged at the people around him like a madman. Seeing this, everyone's expression changed and they quickly retreated. Lu Feng suddenly shouted, "How dare you!" As soon as he finished speaking, he appeared in front of Lu Xianming and pressed his right hand on the top of Lu Xuanming's head. Lu Xuanming's body trembled violently, and after a while, his scarlet eyes gradually became clear. Lu Xianming looked around blankly, then looked at the pig demon corpses on the ground. In the next moment, he suddenly raised his head and roared, "Who is it? Who is it?" Lu Feng's expression was gloomy. He turned to look at two guards not far away. The two guards' expressions changed drastically, and they hurriedly knelt on one knee. One of the guards said, "City Lord, the young City Lord forbade the two of us from entering the palace, so we—" "What's the use of having the two of you?" Lu Feng suddenly roared. In the next moment, he waved his right hand, and the bodies of the two guards exploded. Lu Feng coldly glanced at his surroundings. The faces of the people around him changed drastically, and they hurriedly turned around and fled. In front of the city gate, Lu Feng clenched his fists, his expression frighteningly gloomy. As for Lu Xianming, his facial features were twisted to the point of being deformed. Humiliation. The greatest humiliation of his life. He, Lu Xianming, would soon become the laughingstock of the entire divine central continent. Not only that, but when he thought about what had happened, Lu Xianming was like a raging beast, clenching his fists and roaring madly. Lu Feng turned to look to the side. There, an old man quietly appeared. The old man bowed slightly. This should be Yi Xian's doing. Who is Yi Xian? Lu Xianming turned to look at the old man with a ferocious expression. The old man said in a low voice, "The enemy of our Realm Defense Alliance is also Yi Ling's sister. This time he should be after Yi Ling." Yi Ling. Lu Xuanming's expression was ferocious. After a while, he suddenly looked at Lu Feng and said, "Isn't today the day I'm marrying Yi Ling? Let's go and fetch the bride. The humiliation I suffered today, I will return it to his sister 100-fold." Lu Feng nodded. "Of course, this grudge will be avenged." Then he turned to the side and said, "Send my order. Go to the frigid North clan to fetch the bride." The old man hesitated for a moment before he said, "That fellow Yi Xian will probably show himself again. Old man, follow him yourself." With that, he turned around and left. Very quickly, a huge cloud ship slowly rose up from Sky Cloud City. The cloud ship was decorated with lanterns and banners, looking extremely festive. The destination of this ship was the frigid North clan. What was worth mentioning was that Lu Xian's Sun Hell Pig's matter had swiftly spread throughout the entire Sky Cloud City, and moreover, it was spreading out of Sky Cloud City at an extremely fast speed. Lu Xianming wasn't very famous in the entire divine central continent, but his uncle was. Hence, as the news spread, it would eventually bring Supreme Lord Lu along. But when it spread to some further places, it became Supreme Lord Lu's Sun Hell Pig, Realm Defense Alliance. In the whole, Supreme Lord Lu's expression was extremely gloomy. Obviously, he already knew about what had happened in Sky Cloud City. After a while, Supreme Lord Lu looked at an old man below him. Still no news of Yi Xian's whereabouts? The old man shook his head. After this person entered the divine central continent, it was as if he had vanished into thin air. There's no news of him at all. According to my deduction, this person might have some sort of aura-concealing treasure on him. Otherwise, it's impossible that there's no trace of him at all. Moreover, this person had entered the governor's residence of Sky Cloud City, but the 3 true Imperial Realm experts in the residence didn't notice anything at all. Aura-concealing. Supreme Lord Lu frowned slightly. Even true Imperial Realm experts were able to conceal him. The old man nodded. This person should have reached the 10,000 Dharma realm. Ordinary Imperial Realm experts are no match for him, and it's difficult for true Imperial Realm experts to discover him. This matter is a little troublesome. Supreme Lord Lu said calmly. What's troublesome? Why did Yi Xian come to the Divine Central Continent? Because of his sister, Yi Ling. As long as Yi Ling is still in Frost North Sect, Yi Xian won't be able to run away. Hasn't Xian Ming gone to Frost North Sect? Bring some men with you. That Yi Xian will definitely appear. The old man hesitated for a moment before saying, Supreme Lord, if that Sword Immortal appears. Sword Immortal. Supreme Lord Lu narrowed his eyes and kept silent for a long time. Finally, he said in a deep voice, Our men should have reached the Endless Star regions by now. We should have information on that mysterious woman soon. As for this Yi Xian, if he appears, feel free to attack. If that mysterious woman appears. As he said that, he flicked his finger and a ray of white light appeared in front of the old man. What's this? The old man was slightly puzzled. Supreme Lord Lu said in a deep voice, This is a clone of my lord. My lord personally bestowed it to me to deal with that mysterious woman. Remember, don't use this clone until the mysterious woman appears. Otherwise, the Realm Defense Alliance won't be able to restrain her. The old man carefully put away the ray of white light. He seemed to have thought of something and said, Supreme Lord, Yi Xian isn't simple at all. Why don't you kill him yourself and not give him a chance? Supreme Lord Lu glanced at the old man and said, I still have important matters to attend to. If you're not confident, then bring 2 more true Imperial Dharma Realm experts with you. I don't believe that Yi Xian is so monstrous that he can even kill true Imperial Dharma Realm experts. The old man, he turned around and left without saying another word. Supreme Lord Lu slowly closed his eyes in the hall. The mysterious woman appeared in his mind again. He actually wanted to go there himself, but he was still slightly fearful. One must know that the mysterious woman had killed a few true Imperial Dharma Realm experts in an instant. Even he couldn't kill a true Imperial Dharma Realm expert in an instant. Most importantly, the mysterious woman had broken the formation that his lord had set up in the firmament world with a single sword strike. Although his lord had given him a clone, he still wasn't confident. The terror of the mysterious woman had been deeply imprinted in his mind. This time, if he went there personally and the mysterious woman appeared again, his clone would be useless. Without a doubt, he would really die. Simply put, this time, he wanted to see if the mysterious woman would appear again when Yi Xian was in a desperate situation. If she didn't appear, then it would be great. A few true Imperial Dharma Realm experts were enough to kill Yi Xian. If she appeared, then he could protect himself. A moment later, Supreme Lord Lu stood up and came to the back of the hall. There was a pitch-black door at the back of the hall. Behind the door was a deep starry sky. Supreme Lord Lu bowed slightly. My lord. After a moment of silence, a hoarse voice came from the door. Track down that woman with all your strength. How dare she ruin my plans? I will destroy her body, imprison her soul, and let her suffer for 100 lifetimes. As soon as the voice fell, in a starry sky palace somewhere in the endless starry sky, a woman in a plain dress suddenly opened her eyes. She looked up and her expression gradually turned cold. Incantation of truth. What kind of rubbish is this? How dare you cast an incantation of truth on me? Isn't it good to be alive? As soon as she finished speaking, she opened her hand and an illusory sword quietly condensed in her palm. The woman in the plain dress got up and walked out of the hall. The sword in her hand trembled violently. At the same time, she opened her mouth and said, In the name of my sword, I summon the spirits of the universe. Who said this? Show yourself. As soon as she finished speaking, the sword in her hand suddenly flew out and entered the starry sky. Soon the starry sky began to tremble. How dare you? At this moment, an angry roar suddenly sounded in the starry sky. Who dares to disturb the order of the starry sky? Are you tired of living? At the entrance of the palace, the woman in the plain dress raised her head and looked into the starry sky. There was a hint of mockery at the corner of her mouth. Tired of living? If I don't want to die, who in this world can stop me? If I want someone to die, who can't? P.S. I've been sick with the flu recently. I've been dizzy for a day and I'm feeling weak all over. The flu has been terrifying recently. everyone should really pay attention to keeping warm. Not only yourself, but also your family. Also, everyone should come out and take a look. Let me see you guys who are diving. Chapter 269. Arrogant. In the depths of the distant starry sky, an angry roar suddenly sounded. Then, a powerful pressure passed through the layers of space and crushed towards the woman in the plain dress. The power of the starry sky. At the entrance of the palace, the woman in the plain dress still had a hint of mockery. When the pressure arrived above her head, she pointed with her right hand. Chi! A ray of sword light shot into the sky. Boom! In the sky, the pressure instantly disappeared without a trace. After a moment of silence, an incredulous voice sounded from the distant starry sky. Who are you? The woman in the plain dress sneered. Do you think you can know my name? As soon as she finished speaking, she raised her hand and waved. An illusory sword shot into the sky and entered the vast starry sky. The sword passed through the starry sky and the sword light was even more dazzling than the starlight. Not long after, in the distant starry sky, a scream suddenly sounded. Then, the starry sky fell into dead silence. At the entrance of the palace, the woman in the plain dress had her hands behind her back and her face was gloomy. Looking at the vast starry sky, her eyes gradually became a little dazed. But soon, they became cold again. At this moment, she was about to lose her patience. This was because the last time she received news about the other avatar, that avatar had already disappeared. She knew very well that if she did not have a choice, she would definitely not allow herself to disappear after finding him. Simply put, she must have encountered some trouble. And this trouble might not be small. Gradually, a scene from the past appeared in the woman's mind. In the mountain crevice, a little boy was hugging a little girl tightly. The little boy looked out of the mountain crevice in horror. Outside the mountain crevice, lightning flashed and thunder rumbled. Countless great demons roared wantonly. The entire world looked like it was doomsday. Although the little boy was extremely shocked, he kept comforting the little girl. Ching, don't be afraid. Big brother is here, Big brother will protect you. The little girl hugged the little boy tightly. Although she was a little afraid, she felt very safe in her big brother's arms. In the middle of the night. Big brother, I'm hungry. The little boy quickly took out a steamed bun and grinned. Ching, eat. Big brother eat too. Big brother has eaten. I'm not hungry really. Touch my belly. As he spoke, the little boy deliberately stuck out his little belly. The little girl believed him. In the middle of the night, the little boy hugged the little girl tightly. His face was extremely pale. He hugged the little girl tightly and said weakly, Ching. Big brother remembers, you seem to like to practice swordsmanship. In a daze, the little girl nodded. Ching has to protect big brother, daddy and mommy. The little boy suddenly cried. However, the little girl in the black clothes did not see it. After the little girl fell asleep, the little boy gently kissed the little girl's forehead. Ching, if you become strong in the future you must protect those who are as weak as us. Mother and father. If there was someone to protect them, they wouldn't have died. Also that whatever God. They're so bad, beat them to death. Brother, I'm so hungry. So hungry. As he spoke, the little boy seemed to have thought of something, and his tears flowed like a broken dam. Brother, I'm not afraid of death, but I'm afraid of what will happen to Ching after I die. You're still so young. Daybreak. The little boy hugged the little girl motionlessly, his body already cold. The little girl buried the little boy in the mountain crevice and knelt there for the entire night. The next day, the little girl got up and left. In her hand, there was still half a steamed bun. Her brother could eat it, but he had left his last bit of hope for her. In the starry sky, in front of the palace entrance, the woman in the plain dress stood for a long time. 2 streaks of tears had appeared on her cold cheeks. After a long time, the woman in the plain dress said softly, If anything happens to you, I'll destroy all living beings and let them be buried with you. Don't worry. I'll be with you. Without you, what's the point of reaching the peak of swordsmanship? After saying that, the woman walked into the palace. At the same time, her emotionless voice suddenly rang through the entire palace. I have run out of patience. In the palace, countless experts trembled. Azure World, Divine Central Continent. Sky Cloud City's wedding procession entered the Frosty North territory. At that moment, everyone in the Frosty North sect was furious. Who in the Divine Central Continent didn't know Lu Xuanming's character? Moreover, Lu Xianming had just done something so shocking and shameful. Now, Sky Cloud City was here to escort a bride, and it was the Holy Maiden of the Frosty North sect. This was a slap in the face. A vicious slap in the face of the Frosty North sect. In the Frosty North Hall, everyone from the Frosty North sect had gathered. Yiling was also there. She sat beside Shen Weiyang, dressed in an ice dress and looked very beautiful. Even though Yiling was still young, anyone could tell that she would definitely become a devastatingly beautiful woman in the future. Shen Weiyang looked around. The Realm Defense Alliance and Sky Cloud City are obviously using their power to suppress us. What do you think? Below, a woman said in a low voice. Sect Master, is there really no room for negotiation? Shen Weiyang shook her head. I don't think so. The woman below fell silent. Let's shed all pretense of cordiality. At this moment, a beautiful woman suddenly said, although our Frosty North sect is not as good as the Realm Defense Alliance, we will not be bullied so easily. If we don't resist to the end, our Frosty North sect will become the laughingstock of the entire Divine Central Continent. Below, some echoed in agreement. The Realm Defense Alliance and Sky Cloud City's forceful marriage was undoubtedly a great humiliation to the Frosty North sect. At this moment, someone suddenly said, if we fall out with them, it is equivalent to declaring war on the Realm Defense Alliance. And if we declare war, our Frosty North sect has no chance of winning. Someone sneered, without any chance of winning, are we going to let the Realm Defense Alliance bully us like this? However, this matter is of great importance and we need to be cautious. Otherwise, once the flames of war start, it will be a disaster for our Frosty North sect. Everyone in the hall was silent. Because the Frosty North sect could not defeat the Realm Defense Alliance. Just at this moment, a voice suddenly sounded. Why don't we feign civility first? Everyone turned to look. The one who spoke was a beautiful woman. She was the great elder of the Frosty North sect, Lu Yun. Yiling took a look at Lu Yun, her eyes cold. She didn't like this great elder. Because originally, the sacred lady of the Frosty North sect was not her, but the great elder's granddaughter. But after she came, the sacred lady of the Frosty North sect became her. Hence, the great elder would occasionally cause trouble for her. Lu Yun said indifferently, everyone, the spiritual energy in the Divine Central Continent is getting thinner by the day, especially in our Frosty North territory. Many places in our Frosty North territory have already started to melt. Under such circumstances, if our Frosty North sect were to start a war with the Realm Defense Alliance, forgive me for being blunt, what awaits us is the destruction of the sect. The destruction of the sect. Everyone's expressions were grave. No one wanted the sect to be destroyed. At this moment, someone suddenly said, are we really going to marry the sacred lady to that scum? Lu Yun said indifferently, sacred lady? That's the sacred lady of the Frosty North sect. Since you're the sacred lady of our Frosty North sect, then you should naturally think for our sect. Otherwise, what's the point of having a sacred lady who takes up so many cultivation resources by herself but doesn't do anything for our Frosty North sect at a critical moment? Yiling glanced at Lu Yun. Grand Elder I, Yiling, am the sacred lady of the Frosty North sect. If my Frosty North sect were to hand me over now, then it wouldn't just be me, Yiling, but the Frosty North sect and our ancestors. When she spoke up to this point, she stood up and bowed slightly to Lu Yun. I know that my arrival caused the Grand Elder's granddaughter to lose her position as the sacred lady. I'm very sorry for that. However, I still hope that the Grand Elder can set aside his personal feelings for now and work together to face this together. Because without the Frosty North sect, the Grand Elder isn't the Grand Elder anymore, and I'm no longer the sacred lady. What do you think? As soon as she finished speaking, everyone here nodded. Especially Shen Weiyang. She didn't conceal the admiration in her eyes at all. Under the Frosty North sect's full support, Yiling had grown greatly in all aspects. On the other hand, Lu Yun's expression was a bit ugly. Although Yiling's words were gentle, they were as sharp as a knife, and they immediately gained everyone's approval. If she said anything more, then she would be the one who didn't see the bigger picture. Without saying anything else, Lu Yun retreated to the side, but she was still a bit unwilling to give up. She immediately said, "Let me remind you, this time the Realm Defense Alliance targeted the Frosty North Sect and the Sacred Lady because of that Yi Xian. If we don't hand over Yi Xian, the Frosty North Sect." "How dare you!" At this moment, Yi Ling suddenly flew into a rage. A powerful aura suddenly swept out from her body and headed straight for Lu Yun. Everyone was stunned. Obviously, they didn't expect Yi Ling to suddenly attack. In the distance, Lu Yun waved her right hand and directly dispelled the pressure from Yi Ling. She looked coldly at Yi Ling. How impudent. Is this the Sacred Lady of the Frosty North Sect? Yi Ling stared at Lu Yun. "If you dare to do anything to my brother, I will definitely kill you." "How dare you?" Lu Yun said angrily. "Don't think that you can do whatever you want just because you're the Sacred Lady. Let me tell you, the Sacred Lady was given to you by the Frosty North Sect, not your brother. You. Enough." On the side, Xin Weiyang suddenly spoke. Lu Yun didn't say anything, but her expression was extremely cold. Shen Weiyang next to her looked at Yi Ling. "Apologize to the Great Elder." Yi Ling directly shook her head. "No." Shen Weiyang frowned. "Xiaolinger, you're not young anymore. You really shouldn't be so stubborn. Apologize to the Great Elder." Yi Ling said coldly. "No. Who told her to say that about my brother?" Shen Weiyang looked a bit unhappy. "Is your brother more important than the Frosty North Sect in your heart?" Yi Ling answered without thinking, "My brother is more important than my life." Hearing this, there was an uproar. But Shen Weiyang flew into a rage. "How dare you? You're a traitor." As soon as she finished speaking, a powerful pressure enveloped Yi Ling. Yi Ling couldn't take it anymore. Her legs buckled and she knelt down. Yi Ling felt wronged and started crying, "Brother!" In her most helpless and difficult times, the first person she would think of was her brother. Just then, a man suddenly appeared at the entrance of the Frosty North Sect's main hall. Everyone in the field turned their heads in succession. It was Yi Xian. Yi Xian walked slowly to Yi Ling and said with a trembling voice, "Don't cry. I'll take you home." Chapter 270. Heartache. That was how Yi Xian felt at the moment. Yi Ling had always been by his side since they were young. Even though the two of them had led a tough life, he had always tried his best not to let Yi Ling suffer. Even though the two of them had led a tough life, there was joy amidst the hardship. Yi Xian felt as if his heart was being stabbed when he saw Yi Ling crying. No matter how special her physique was or how monstrous her talent was, she would always be a child in his heart. Everyone was stunned when they saw Yi Xian. Obviously, they hadn't expected Yi Xian to show up here. Shen Weiyang and the others looked at each other. In the end, Xin Weiyang looked at Yi Xian. "How did you get in here?" At this moment, Shen Weiyang and the others were slightly shocked. Because the Frosty North territory was guarded by all sorts of powerful cultivators. Besides the powerful cultivators, there were also some powerful formations. Unless one was a true Imperial Dharma Realm cultivator, ordinary people wouldn't be able to enter the main hall of the Frosty North Sect without making a sound. But Yi Xian was obviously not a true Imperial Dharma Realm cultivator. Yi Xian paid no attention to Shen Weiyang. He walked up to Yi Ling and slashed with his sword. Boom! The pressure that was pressing down on Yi Ling was instantly shattered by Yi Xian's sword. Shen Weiyang and the others instantly became solemn when they saw this. After all, Shen Weiyang was a true Imperial Dharma Realm cultivator. Even though she hadn't used her full strength, it was still the pressure released by a true Imperial Dharma Realm cultivator. But Yi Xian had destroyed it with a single strike. Everyone looked at each other with a wisp of shock in their eyes. Yi Xian paid no attention to the people of the Frosty North Sect. He helped Yi Ling up and a gust of cold air instantly spread towards him. He was shocked and quickly released his kindness sword intent to resist the cold air. However, he was surprised to find that his kindness sword intent was actually unable to resist the cold air. The cold air around Yi Ling was even more terrifying than before. "Brother!" At this time, Yi Ling suddenly threw herself into Yi Xian's arms. She hugged Yi Xian tightly and cried like a child. No one knew how many days and nights she had missed her brother. In the frigid North Sect, she only did 2 things a day. The first was to cultivate, and the second was to miss her brother. No one knew what her brother meant to her. For Yi Xian, his younger sister was the biggest taboo in his life, and for Yi Ling, wasn't it the same? Yi Xian gently hugged Yi Ling. At the moment, he was calm and happy. At this moment, he was very satisfied. The people of the frigid North sect just stared at the siblings. Shen Weiyang's face was a little gloomy. Actually, she was quite fearful of Yi Xian as well. Because how could someone who was so wanted by the Realm Defense Alliance and still alive be an ordinary person? Especially Xueqi Academy. The Xueqi Academy of the Central Divine Prefecture wasn't inferior to the frigid North sect, but it was now inferior to even a third-rate power. Mysterious. In Shen Weiyang's opinion, Yi Xian was undoubtedly quite mysterious. Meanwhile, Yi Xian wiped off the tears on Yi Ling's face and smiled. Big brother will take you away. Yi Ling nodded and held tightly onto Yi Xian's arm. Go! Lu Yun suddenly laughed coldly. Yi Xian, you seem to have forgotten that this is the frigid North sect, not your Pine Prefecture. Yi Xian suddenly turned around and glared angrily at Lu Yun. The frigid North sect is nothing. I don't even fear the Realm Defense Alliance, so why would I fear your frigid North sect? Lu Yun flared up with rage and was about to attack. Meanwhile, Yi Xian suddenly pointed his sword at Lu Yun. Old bastard, try and touch me. Let's see if your frigid North sect can survive until tomorrow. How dare you? Lu Yun was furious and was about to attack. Meanwhile, Shen Weiyang suddenly said, Stop. Lu Yun turned around to look at Shen Weiyang and said angrily, He insulted me like this, so why should I stop? As she spoke, she was about to attack. However, a wave of pressure pressed down upon her. It was Shen Weiyang's pressure. Lu Yun turned around to look at Shen Weiyang. Shen Weiyang spoke via voice transmission. Why don't you ask him how he got into my frigid North sect? How could he have snuck into my frigid North sect without any help? Would the Realm Defense Alliance play such tricks if he didn't have any backing? Lu Yun gradually calmed down when she heard this. The Realm Defense Alliance. Only then did she remember that even the Realm Defense Alliance couldn't do anything to this person. Yi Xian didn't care about Lu Yun and the people of the frigid North sect. He grabbed Yi Ling and turned to leave. Just then, Shen Weiyang suddenly appeared in front of him and Yi Ling Shen Weiyang stared at Yi Xian. She is the Holy Virgin of the frigid North sect. Where are you taking her? Yi Xian said indifferently. I am her brother. I can take her wherever I want. Shen Weiyang said coldly, Yi Xian, don't be unreasonable. Making trouble out of nothing? Yi Xian's expression was ferocious. If not for the fact that the frigid North sect did her a favor and that you made her kneel down, I would have destroyed the frigid North sect a long time ago. Shen Weiyang narrowed her eyes and there was murderous intent in them. Yi Xian, I know that you have a powerful background. But do you really think the frigid North sect is afraid of you? Yi Xian didn't speak. He pointed his sword at Shen Weiyang. Let's fight one-on-one. Hearing this, Shen Weiyang's expression turned cold. How could she tolerate such a provocation? She slammed her palm down and a strong wave of coldness pressed down on Yi Xian. Yi Xian stomped his right foot and a strong wave of sword will swept out from his body. Evil sword will. At the same time, Yi Xian slashed down with his sword. One strike to decide life and death. Seeing this, Shen Weiyang's lips curled into a mocking smile. She moved her finger and the power in Yi Xian's sword began to disintegrate. Spatial disintegration. The scariest part of the true defense level. But at this moment, a mysterious force suddenly wrapped around Yi Xian's sword, as well as the power and sword will in his sword. Spatial disintegration was ineffective. Shen Weiyang was shocked. At this moment, Yi Xian's sword descended. Boom! The wave of coldness shattered instantly and turned into a wave of air that shook the surroundings. Yi Xian was pushed back a few meters while Yi Ling hurried to him and said anxiously, Brother, are you hurt? Yi Xian shook his head but he was excited. It really worked. Before coming here, he'd imagined using the Space Dao Law's spatial cage to protect his sword technique so that he could fight against a true defense-level powerhouse. But he hadn't expected it to work. Because his spatial cage had forcefully blocked Shen Weiyang's spatial disintegration. Without the spatial disintegration, a true defense-level powerhouse wasn't so terrifying to Yi Xian. Opposite Yi Xian, Shen Weiyang stared at Yi Xian. Besides disbelief, there was a trace of fear in her eyes. How did you do it? At this moment, she was extremely shocked. Because her spatial disintegration had actually been ineffective. Ineffective. This was the first time she had encountered such a situation. Yi Xian didn't answer Shen Weiyang. He pulled Yi Ling and was about to leave when Granny Lung suddenly appeared in front of him and Yi Ling. Just as Yi Xian was about to speak, Yi Ling suddenly said softly, "Brother, Granny Lung is very good to me." Hearing that, Yi Xian's expression softened and he bowed to Shen Weiyang. "Thank you for taking care of Ling, all this time, senior. Yi Xian, will remember this." Granny Lung sighed softly. "I'm from the Frosty North sect. If you really remember this, you should let her stay in the Frosty North sect. Staying in the Frosty North sect is the best place for her." Yi Xian shook his head. "I don't want her to suffer any grievances." "How can she grow if she doesn't suffer?" Granny Lung retorted. "She has to grow up eventually. She should learn to be independent and strong. If she stays with you all the time, your pampering will harm her instead. What do you think?" Yi Xian fell silent. Seeing that Yi Xian was silent, Granny Lung was relieved. She had finally realized something. Yi Xian was a man who could be persuaded by reason but not cowed by force. If you talked to him nicely, he would listen to you. However, if you tried to threaten him and force him, he would be even fiercer than you. No, this guy would start a fight if you didn't agree with him. At this moment, Granny Lung looked at Yi Ling. "You've been devouring the treasure of the Frosty North sect for some time now. You'll be able to use it in a few days. By then, you'll be even more powerful. If you leave the Frosty North sect now, all your previous efforts will be in vain without the suppression of the cold here." Yi Ling lowered her head. "I want to stay with my brother." Granny Ling smiled and said, "But you're not as strong as your brother now. You won't be able to help him if you stay by his side. Not only will you not be able to help him, but you might even become his burden. Do you want that?" She knew Yi Ling's temper very well. She couldn't force him. She might look weak, but she was actually very stubborn. "Are we just going to let what happened just now go?" At this moment Lu Yun suddenly said. Yi Xian barged into the Frosty North sect and attacked the sect master. He completely ignored the Frosty North sect and she then pointed at Yi Ling, who was not far away. "She's the holy lady of the Frosty North sect, but she's with an outsider. What right does she have to be the holy lady of the Frosty North sect?" "My brother isn't an outsider." Yi Ling glared at Lu Yun. "He's my brother." Lu Yun said ferociously, "Is your brother more important than the Frosty North sect?" Yi Ling was about to speak when Yi Xian suddenly dashed forward with his sword, and a beam of sword light slashed at Lu Yun. One strike to decide life and death. Lu Yun's expression changed. She hadn't expected Yi Xian to attack. However, she wasn't afraid at all. She pointed with her finger and an icicle suddenly shot out from the tip of her finger. At the same time, the space around Yi Xian's sword started to distort. Spatial distortion. Spatial manipulation. She's only at the spell manipulation realm. Yi Xian was stunned. He'd thought that Lu Yun was at least at the spell manipulation realm, but she was only at the spell manipulation realm. Yi Xian didn't think too much and twisted his right hand. Hiss. The spatial energy was shattered and the space returned to normal. At the same time, Yi Xian's sword broke Lu Yun's icicle and pressed against her forehead. Everyone was dumbfounded. One strike. He subdued Lu Yun with one strike? Yi Xian was actually surprised as well because he didn't expect the great elder of Frosty North sect to be so weak. Without much thought, Yi Xian patted Lu Yun's ugly face with his sword. "Are you silly?" "Let me ask you, are you silly? My sister has such a powerful brother. Isn't it a good thing for your Frosty North sect? You even F***king offended my brother and sister. Tell me, is your brain filled with H***T? Damn it, even Mo Yunchi is smarter than you." Everyone. At this moment a lady suddenly ran in. Sect master, the people from Sky Cloud City are here. They want us to hand over the sacred lady. Hearing that, Yi Ling hurriedly looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian grinned and patted his shoulder. "Don't be afraid, even if the sky falls, I'll carry it." P.S. I asked you to come out and some of you really fought. Are you demons? Don't you have anything to say to me? You're tuning in to the Xueqi's Martial Arts Saga YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.